Chapter 1064. Lan Xiaoni stared at the excited Lin with a dumbstruck expression on her face. Lin didn't waste any more time with words. In any case, he wouldn't be able to tell what was going on. Divine inspection technique. Information regarding the golden key began to appear in his mind. One golden key. The key that can open the captain's core cabin. Lin's expression faltered upon hearing this. The key to the captain's core cabin? Wasn't the captain the star dancer? He had thought that this was a key to a treasure trove, but he was told that this was the key to the star dancer's boudoir, and Lin was very angry. He felt like his dreams had been shattered. The star dancer's boudoir was useless to him. He was a man who was constantly advancing in pursuit of his dreams and treasures. How could he waste time on something as boring as this? This key was completely useless to him. And Lin immediately turned to leave. Big Boss and Lin, where are we going now? Lan Xiaoni immediately followed along. And Lin replied with a solemn expression. To the captain's core cabin. Theoretically speaking, the battleship's control room and the captain's core cabin weren't too far apart. This was the core area of the battleship. They didn't have a specific direction anyway, so they could only wander around aimlessly. Thankfully, this battleship had been in disrepair for many years, so even though there was no energy to maintain normal operations, most of the doors could still be opened by Lan Xiaoni with her bloodline power. That's right, the Starfire battleship acknowledged the descendants of the Spirit Fish clan, even though it was ownerless. Lan Xiaoni felt a sense of accomplishment upon seeing that even Big Boss and Lin was relying on her at a time like this. They passed through over 100 gates constructed from special alloys before finally arriving at a very special gate. The gate was semicircular, and it looked like a black curtain of stars, striking one with the feeling that they were about to sink into the curtain of stars. What delighted Lin the most was that there was a row of peculiar ancient text at the top of the gate, as well as 2 fans. He didn't understand ancient text, but he knew what fans were. Those were the Star Dancer's fans. Could this be the Star Dancer's boudoir? Lin was extremely excited. Lan Xiaoni rolled her eyes at Lin before turning to the ancient text and nodding. That should be the case. The ancient text of the Spirit Fish clan probably represents the astrologer who dances in the starry sky. As she spoke, she placed her hands in front of the door as usual, and the power of her bloodline surged out. In the end, the tried-and-true method of opening the door didn't work. Lan Xiaoni was a little embarrassed. A smug smile appeared on Lin's face. A door that even you can't open must require a very high level of authority. Looks like this is the Star Dancer's core cabin. At times like this, we still have to rely on this thing. He took out the golden key and inserted it into the gap next to the door. The door opened, but the way it opened was a little peculiar. A gargantuan mouth suddenly extended from the screen of stars before swallowing Lin and Lan Xiaoni. Lin was shocked. Lan Xiaoni screamed. The 2 of them didn't even get a chance to unleash their emotions before they crashed heavily to the ground. Lin raised his head and was greeted by the sight of an extremely antiquated house. There was a blue stone floor, a red carved table, and a painting on the wall. Outside the carved wooden windows, a vast expanse of starry sky could be seen. There seemed to be a figure sitting on the bed that was surrounded by a light blue curtain. Lin and Lan Xiaoni's nerves tightened at the same time. Don't do anything. Let me do it. Lin spoke with excitement. He pulled out his evil-slaying sword and sliced through the blue curtain. As the curtains slowly drifted down, a beautiful woman sat silently on the edge of the bed. Her eyes were closed, and there was no trace of vitality in her as her fishtail dangled to the ground. In comparison to death, she looked more like a beautiful woman taking a nap. Time had passed for countless years, but it didn't leave a single mark on her body. Is this the Star Dancer's body? She looks even more beautiful than when she was fighting. Lin couldn't help but praise. Lan Xiaoni reminded him with a serious expression. Big Boss and Lin, did you come here to admire a corpse? Don't forget what you're here for. I'm here for what I'm here for. Look at this Star Dancer. She died in a sitting position, and she looks so peaceful too. This is so strange. Isn't this worthy of our research? And Lin retorted. Lan Xiaoni pouted angrily as she knew she couldn't win an argument against him. And Lin made his way over to the star dancer's body and carefully inspected it. He couldn't help but poke a finger at the star dancer's delicate cheek to find that it was a little cold, but not hard. Her body is very intact. It looks like she was inflicted with some kind of extremely powerful curse technique, which is why she died. And Lin analyzed. Low-level curses targeted the body, high-level curses targeted the consciousness, and top-level curses targeted karma and fate. For example, I can curse you to be unlucky for the rest of your life. This is actually a top-level curse technique that can affect the fate of a living being. It's untraceable and extremely difficult to dispel. And Lin couldn't tell how the star dancer had died, so he could only attribute her death to a curse technique. To be able to curse a mighty figure at the return to void pinnacle stage, the culprit must be at least at the Dao integration stage, right? Lan Xiaoni was a little nervous, and Lin nodded. The star dancer also has the Starfire battleship, so normal Dao integration stage mighty figures might not be able to do anything to her. The culprit must be a powerful being of the Dao integration stage, at the very least. It's just that, if they really wanted to kill the star dancer, wouldn't it be much easier for them to just fight her? Look at the situation now. The curse technique wasn't completely successful. The star dancer was still able to split up a portion of her power to stay behind on the battleship and bully us with glee. And Lin was clearly a little resentful toward this. Lan Xiaoni suddenly had a bold thought in response to Lin's question. It's not impossible. If the culprit didn't even take the star dancer seriously, then wouldn't it make sense that they could just throw a curse technique at her? And Lin, then how bad *SS would they have to be? Probably as bad *SS as Big Boss and Lin, who's at the return to void stage. Lan Xiaoni speculated with a serious expression. What kind of *T are you talking about? And Lin was quite elated. He was very pleased that his underling had a good eye for detail. As for the living being that had killed the star dancer, they didn't know who it was, but they had a feeling that it wasn't the ancient heavenly fiend celestial. If the ancient heavenly fiend celestial really was that bad *SS, then it wouldn't have been slain by the two high priests. And Lin searched the star dancer's body again to find that it was cold and soft. That wasn't the point. He just wanted to see if there were any treasures. It was a pity that this mighty figure at the return to void pinnacle stage didn't have a single treasure on her. In the end, Lan Xiaoni stowed the star dancer's body into her storage ring. Even though they were enemies, the star dancer was a top-rate mighty figure of the Spirit Fish clan who had sacrificed herself to protect the clan. If she could return to the Sea Heart Palace, she was going to give this mighty figure a proper burial. The two of them refused to give up, and they continued to rummage through the room, feeling like there was something good waiting for them. They had finally found the golden key, so they couldn't just end up with a beautiful corpse, right? That was way too tragic. After a long and arduous search, the two of them finally found a rather special item. This was the Star Dancer's Voyage Diary. Chapter 1065. This was a voyage diary with a black cover and an extremely long number of pages. And Lin flipped open the diary with excitement on his face, and he was immediately dumbstruck by the contents within. What the hell is this thing? The characters crawled like earthworms, but he couldn't understand a single word. It's the ancient language of the Spirit Fish clan. Leave it to me. Lan Xiaoni patted her voluptuous chest with a smug expression. As the daughter of a top-rate immortal of the Spirit Fish clan, she was extremely knowledgeable about the history and culture of the Spirit Fish clan, so an ancient language wasn't a problem for her. And Lin finally recalled that these characters were very similar to the characters on the top of the gate. Lan Xiaoni began to translate for Lin in the Tai Chu language as she read through the diary. The good thing about this diary was that it could only record major events on the day that took place. For some reason, Lin suddenly thought of Kong Zuexiang's diary. She was a girl who would record everything she ate on that day. The diary was like the only friend she could communicate with, and it was also the proof of her existence in this world. The Star Dancer's diary was even more spectacular. It was a record of what enemies she had defeated on that day and where she had conquered the next day, and it appeared to be extremely domineering and invincible. Not only could she easily kill return to void stage mighty figures, but she could also force out integration stage super mighty figures to flee in a direct confrontation. She was the epitome of an invincible little tyrant. The Starfire battleship really was very powerful, but it burned a lot of money, so normal people couldn't afford it. The rest of the diary was filled with the history of these battles, and Lan Xiaoni patiently described them to Enlin with great interest. After a long time, most of the diary had been flipped through, and what they were most concerned about finally took place. The ancient heavenly fiend celestial had appeared. This monster that seemed to have appeared out of thin air wreaked havoc in the West Sea. Countless peculiar sea monsters also suddenly appeared, and they obeyed the ancient heavenly fiend celestial's command to attack all living beings in the sea. Thus, an earth-shattering battle erupted. The ancient heavenly fiend celestial and its subordinates were far more powerful than the Spirit Fish clan had anticipated, and the Spirit Fish clan was immediately forced into a disadvantageous position. However, the Spirit Fish clan wasn't always on the receiving end. At some point in time, the Spirit Fish clan decided to use their most powerful weapon, the Starfire battleship. One had to admit that the Starfire battleship was extremely powerful. It had once suppressed the ancient heavenly fiend celestial for a while with the help of the clan leader and the high priestess. In the diary, the Star Dancer described the ancient heavenly fiend celestial as follows. The ancient heavenly fiend celestial has the most terrifying control over the power of the ocean that I've ever seen. Even though I didn't want to admit it, its control over the power of the ocean had indeed surpassed that of any living creature I had ever seen. Even High Priest Shi-Heizi couldn't compare to it. It seemed to be the master of this sea. Shi-Heizi was the most powerful being in the Spirit Fish clan at the time, but he was forced to the point where he didn't dare to use the power of the ocean. Apparently, he would be controlled by the ancient heavenly fiend celestial if he used the power of the ocean, and Lin's mouth twitched when he heard this. Even though he wasn't there, he could empathize with Shi-Heizi's awkwardness. As such, the Spirit Fish clan mighty figures could only use other types of powers to battle the ancient heavenly fiend celestial. The Starfire battleship, which was adept at using star power, had become the main force of this battle. During one battle, they had even fought their way into the ancient heavenly fiend celestial's lair. At the bottom of the ocean, there was a massive blue spatial hole from which a steady stream of strange creatures surged out. It was quite clear that the ancient heavenly fiend celestial had come from that spatial hole. Shi-Heizi, you guys hold off the ancient heavenly fiend celestial for now. I'll go and destroy its lair. The pink-tailed mermaid said decisively. All right, but you have to be careful and come back as soon as possible. High Priest Shi-Heizi roared as he and the Spirit Fish clan leader tried their best to hold off the ancient heavenly fiend celestial. The Star Dancer had been through countless battles, and her personality was extremely ruthless and capable. She loved having her allies hold off the enemy while she went to raid the enemy's lair. She wanted to see if the ancient heavenly fiend celestial would scram back to that world after blowing up its lair. The Starfire battleship launched a Starfire annihilation cannon into the blue spatial hole. Tens of thousands of strange sea mutant beasts within and without the blue spatial hole were instantly engulfed by the cannon blast, and their bodies were completely annihilated. The Starfire battleship flew into the blue spatial hole just like that. After entering the blue spatial hole, the Star Dancer heard the ancient heavenly fiend celestial's triumphant laughter. Ha ha ha! Do you really think I'll be held off by you guys so easily? Stupid fish, once you go in, you will stay there forever. These were the last words she heard from the ancient heavenly fiend celestial. The indestructible spatial passageway between the two worlds suddenly shrank and disappeared. The Starfire battleship lost contact with the outside world. It was as if its spatial coordinates with the Tai-Chu continent had been completely erased, and it had lost all sense of direction. All of the tens of thousands of operators and soldiers on the battleship instantly fell into a state of panic. Anyone who found out that they couldn't find their way home would be shaken violently. The Star Dancer stepped forward at this moment and changed the subject. She claimed that they had finally managed to enter the ancient heavenly Fian Celestial's lair, so it would be a waste if they didn't destroy its lair. If they had anything to say, they could do that after destroying its lair. All of the soldiers on the Starfire battleship were extremely exceptional soldiers, so this was exactly what they wanted to hear. If they couldn't find their way home, then they would destroy the enemy's lair first. The world within the blue spatial hole was also an underwater world. There were countless strange creatures here. The Starfire battleship slaughtered everything in its path. Blood stained the seawater red, and countless living beings perished to the Starfire battleship's cannons. A battleship with the combat prowess of a Dow integration stage super mighty figure was like a tiger in a flock of sheep, and it could slaughter anyone it saw without any pressure. Everything seemed to be going very smoothly. Until that day, Lan Xiaoni noticed that the Star Dancer's handwriting was a little different when she wrote this diary entry. She seemed to be trembling. On this day, we saw an extremely extravagant underwater palace. There's no mistaking it. That must be the ancient heavenly Fian Celestial's home. That was what the Star Dancer was thinking. She couldn't even be bothered to greet the rest of the soldiers and immediately issued a command to unleash a massive mushroom cloud upon the underwater palace. The terrifying cannon blast instantly razed the palace to the ground. All of the soldiers on the battleship erupted into raucous cheers. All of them were feeling extremely elated. All of a sudden, an extremely mighty being appeared above the mushroom cloud. It was impossible to see its appearance. However, all of the members of the Starfire battleship were struck by the urge to kneel and worship it. This was not just a transcendence in cultivation base. It was more like a transcendence in the hierarchy of life. If there was a true God in this world, then this God that I'm looking at should be one. However, that God doesn't seem to welcome us. It only said one thing to us. You don't belong here, and you can't go back, so all of you can disappear. Thus, all of the members of the Starfire battleship began to disappear. They didn't cry out in pain. Instead, their bodies gradually became transparent and non-existent. No matter how much they struggled, it was all to no avail. In less than a minute, tens of thousands of their comrades had all disappeared, along with all traces of life. I was the only one left. I had never thought that I would see a being that could kill all living beings with just a few words. This wasn't power. There was no way that pure power could achieve this. This was the power that only a true God could wield. For the first time, I experienced fear. Chapter 1066. But why didn't I disappear? Had I been ignored by God? The Star Dancer stared blankly at the blue figure outside the battleship. Soon, she rejected her previous thoughts. She discovered that she was also dying, and her vitality was slowly fading away. The Star Dancer's heart jolted with shock. She didn't even know what kind of power was robbing her of her vitality. It was as if she shouldn't be living, and death was the only way to go. Dead. They're all going to die. All of the living beings here were going to die just because of a single sentence from it. The entire Starfire battleship had been annihilated in the blink of an eye. The crushing sense of despair and shock forced the Star Dancer to calm down as she carefully analyzed her current situation. Even though she hadn't disappeared, she was dying in a different way. She was the only one who had grasped the power of the divine Tao among the tens of thousands of soldiers on this battleship. So, living beings who had attained the power of the divine Tao would be able to defend themselves against that being's attacks to a certain extent. Even though she was only dying in a different way, the Star Dancer immediately made a decision. The being above the mushroom cloud was not something she could face head-on. The only thing she could do now was to minimize her presence and find a chance to return to the West Sea. At the very least, she had to get the Starfire battleship back to the West Sea. Her chances were very slim, but this was the only thing she could do. The Star Dancer, who dared to oppose even Tao integration stage mighty figures, felt like an ant in that instant. This battleship can go down as well. A voice that seemed to be quite far away, yet also seemed to strike directly at her consciousness, suddenly sounded. Before the Star Dancer had a chance to react, a peerlessly sharp blue blade projection fell from the sky and almost sliced the entire battleship in half. An explosive screech erupted throughout the entire ocean. The battleship cracked open and wailed with anguish before plummeting into the deep sea continent. The Star Dancer's expression was one of despair. The battleship's propulsion system had been sliced apart with extreme precision. How could there be such a power? How could there be such a being? Who was it? Boom! The Starfire battleship crashed into the deep sea continent, sweeping up a massive sandstorm. The Star Dancer's entire body was trembling, but she was unable to do anything. The blue figure gradually disappeared, as if it had never appeared in the first place. However, the Star Dancer knew that her words would sink the Starfire battleship to the bottom of the ocean forever. The Star Dancer suddenly discovered that there was only one thing she could do, and that was to wait for death. His life force was still fading away, and his power of the divine Tao was also growing weaker and weaker. At this rate, he might not even last a day. She had thought of many unexpected situations, but she had never imagined that things would turn out like this. She had inexplicably died. Forget it. I'll record everything in my nautical diary. At the very least, one day in the future, the descendants of the Spirit Fish clan would learn about everything that had happened here. Although all of this was so bizarre that it was like a dream. Prior to her death, the Star Dancer had activated the Starfire battleship's spatial locator waves to their maximum output and used a mystic technique to inject all of her remaining power into the Hongmeng Divine Wood. After doing all this, she closed the diary and sat quietly at the head of the bed. She recalled her past life and waited for her final death. The diary ended here. Lin and Lan Xiaoni both fell silent. Big Boss and Lin, what do you think the blue figure that killed the Star Dancer was? Lan Xiaoni was the first to break the silence. It should be a god of creation stage mighty figure like Nuwa, the three pure ones, and Panga, right? And Lin's brows furrowed. Lan Xiaoni shook her head in objection. That's not all. I've seen Nuwa and Cyril in battle. Even a god of creation stage mighty figure above the Tao integration stage wouldn't be able to decide the fate of all the living beings on the Starfire battleship with a single word. Don't forget, Big Boss and Lin, the Starfire battleship possesses power comparable to a Tao integration stage super mighty figure. That god is at least comparable to a Tao integration stage mighty figure, Big Boss and Lin. And Lin's expression darkened upon hearing this. Please don't brag. I feel like I'm going to explode from your bullsh *T. Also, when did I become a unit of measurement? And Lin added with a resigned expression. Lan Xiaoni stuck out her tongue with a seductive smile. Wouldn't that make Big Boss and Lin more immersive? Immersive my *guess. It's very strange. And Lin retorted. He thought to himself for a moment before heaving a forlorn sigh. The more you know, the more insecure you become. To think that a mighty figure like the Star Dancer would die for no apparent reason. What if I encountered a god like that, and it was jealous of my handsome looks and told me that I should disappear from this world? What would I do then? Lan Xiaoni. It wasn't unreasonable to be concerned, but wasn't there a problem with this reasoning? Lan Xiaoni was still hesitating about whether she should tell Lin the truth about his handsome looks when a look of horror suddenly appeared on Lin's face. Crap! Lan Xiaoni turned to him with a confused expression. What is it? The diary says that the Starfire battleship fell on a continent at the bottom of the ocean. As for us, we also discovered the Starfire battleship in an unfamiliar underwater world. Could this place be? And Lin spoke with a tense expression. This? Lan Xiaoni's eyes widened in shock. An extremely terrifying thought appeared in both of their minds at the same time. And Lin and Lan Xiaoni drew a sharp intake of breath in unison. The place where the Starfire battleship had fallen, the lair of the ancient heavenly fiend celestial, the place where the mysterious being had appeared, and Lin had just joked about how he would feel extremely insecure if he encountered a god like that. Now, it was very likely that the place they were in was where that mysterious god was. Have we fallen into a wolf's den? Lan Xiaoni trembled uncontrollably like a frightened little lamb. And Lin took a deep breath before speaking in a calm voice. Don't panic. After careful analysis, there are actually a lot of uncertainties here. This deep ocean may not be that terrifying place. Think about it. This place was referred to as the Heavenly Turtle Seabed Purgatory by Tian Shinji, and it clearly has something to do with the Heavenly Turtle tribe. How could it be that alternate world? Besides, even if that alternate world has become the trial world of the High Priestess tomb, doesn't that mean that the two High Priestesses have already conquered this world? It's very likely that the mysterious being is no longer here. This place has completely become the trial field of the fallen god tomb. And Lin's explanation was so convincing that even he was convinced. Lan Xiaoni then made a critical conjecture. Then what if Tian Shinji and Shi Haizi didn't discover the Star Dancer's nautical diary? And Lin was dumbstruck. One had to realize that the Star Dancer's divine intent wasn't an independent life form and didn't have a complete memory. It was very likely that she had been used by the High Priestesses as a trial boss. The wooden statue would only appear when the residual power of the Star Dancer's body had completely disappeared. In other words, the High Priestesses didn't know about the wooden statue, they didn't know about the golden key, they couldn't enter the Star Dancer's room, and they didn't see the nautical diary. It was very likely that they didn't know anything about this world. It was just that for some reason, he had treated this place as an ordinary mystic realm to play around with. No. This is the place where the Starfire battleship crashed. There's no way that the two High Priestesses would treat this world as a normal one. And Lin suddenly realized that something was amiss. Lan Xiaoni said, I remember now. The fallen god's seabed tomb was constructed on the seabed where the ancient heavenly fiend celestial appeared. There must be a reason behind this. It's very likely that we were able to pass through the tomb to this alternate world. And Lin's brows furrowed. If this really is the alternate world where the ancient heavenly fiend celestial resides, then didn't the diary say that opening a passageway between the two worlds would be extremely difficult? How could we have been teleported here by Tian Shinji? Unless there are other mighty figures in this world helping us. Cold sweat began to appear on Lan Xiaoni's forehead. A peculiar silence ensued. The two mighty figures were able to disregard the dangers of this place and open up a passageway between the two worlds after a ferocious analysis. A thought began to well up in Lin and Lan Xiaoni's hearts. Could it be that the two High Priestesses and that mysterious being were involved in some kind of shady deal? Chapter 1067. This conjecture was actually quite valid. Otherwise, it really couldn't explain the strange behavior of the two high priests. The secret regarding the fate of the two tribes should also have something to do with a shady deal between the high priest and a certain powerful being of this world, and Lin speculated. A thought suddenly occurred to him, and he brought out the photographic crystal from his storage ring. Underling Lan, this is the picture of Tian Shinji's turtle shell that I took. What is the secret regarding the two tribes written on it? Lan Xiaoni took a glance at it before shaking her head with a hint of disappointment. I've seen this type of special ancient text before, but I can only decipher it with reference to the starry sky of the West Sea. And Lin's expression darkened upon hearing this. Can't you just write down the secret? Why do you have to make it so complicated? I really don't understand. What's the point of having to look at the stars to decipher something? It's very secretive, and it looks very powerful and gives off a sense of superiority, Lan Xiaoni replied with an honest expression. And Lin had nothing to say to Lan Xiaoni's honesty. The two of them had fallen into a predicament again. Aside from the addition of a terrifying enemy, they didn't seem to have gained anything else. That's right. If they couldn't leave this accursed place, everything would be for naught. The two of them swept through the Star Dancer's room again. The results were very disappointing. They didn't find any useful information or items. Big Boss and Lin, what do we do now? Lan Xiaoni turned to Lin for help with a hint of fear and anticipation in her eyes. Lin paused for a moment before replying. Seeing as the High Priest won't open a path for us, we have one last option. What is it? Lan Xiaoni asked. Find that powerful being of this world and get him to open a passageway for us. Lin replied with a serious expression. Lan Xiaoni. The mermaid princess stared at Lin with astonishment on her face, and there seemed to be tears shimmering in her eyes. And Lin stared blankly at his underling, who was about to burst into tears again, and before he had a chance to ask why, she began to sob again. What? I thought that Big Boss and Lin would be my last resort in a dire situation, but who would have thought that Big Boss would go crazy before I did? Have you already broken down? I can't believe I'm seeking death. Lan Xiaoni sobbed with despair as she wiped away her tears. And Lin's mouth twitched. That mysterious being had sunk the Starfire battleship with just a few words before slaughtering tens of thousands of Spirit Fish Clan powerful beings with his mouth alone. It was no wonder that Lan Xiaoni would think this way if Enlin wanted to meet such a killer. Actually, Enlin had his own considerations for this matter. If that mysterious existence could really reach some kind of deal with the two high priests, then it proved that it was not completely unable to communicate, and there was still room for negotiation. Even though Enlin was only an ordinary soul formation stage cultivator, he had many trump cards. The Vermilion Bird Mirror, the Chaotic Alloy Brick, the Dragon Tribe Mighty Figure in his ring, the Flaming Vermilion Bird in his sea of vital energy, and his crazy system. At the critical moment, he couldn't possibly not use any of them, right? Of course, this was a plan that would not be used until the last moment. All right, don't cry. In any case, let's continue our search on the Starfire battleship and see if there are any other clues. And Lin heaved a forlorn sigh. Lan Xiaoni had no objections, and she left the Star Dancer's cabin before continuing to act as the Bloodline Key. She entered one room after another on the battleship. The Starfire battleship was extremely massive, and it would definitely take over a year to search through all of the rooms. Thankfully, they had found the surveillance room and the battleship map. That made things easier as they only had to search the key areas of the battleship. The search was complete after a few days. Aside from some rare forging materials and energy vessels, they didn't find anything else. To be honest, even if 100 million spirit stones were placed in front of Lin right now, he wouldn't be able to bring himself to pick them up. They were going to die here, so what was the point of all this money? The Star Dancer was the captain of the battleship, yet she couldn't even find a way out of this battleship. So how were they going to find a way out of here? Lin and Lan Xiaoni slumped onto the deck of the battleship with expressions of despair on their faces. There's only one way left. Lin gritted his teeth. No, there's another way. Lan Xiaoni refused to give up hope. What is it? We can cultivate here in secret, and after progressing to the Return to Void stage, we might be able to sense the spatial coordinates of the West Sea and escape from this *TTY place. Lan Xiaoni spoke with conviction. Lin, why don't you just tell me to beat the crap out of that mysterious mighty figure after I progress to the Tao integration stage or the God of creation stage? Lan Xiaoni's eyes lit up. That's a great idea. I think starfish. Starfish my A** guess. And Lin immediately gave her a vicious slap on the head. He didn't want to waste any more time, and he turned to Lan Xiaoni. We can't even tear open a spatial passageway with our power, let alone a passageway whose coordinates are unknown. I'm going to find that mighty figure, so it's up to you whether you want to come with me or not. And Lin turned to leave as he spoke. Lan Xiaoni clenched her fists, and her shoulders trembled slightly, as if she had fallen into a dilemma. After a few seconds, she took a deep breath before following in Lin with a determined expression. So be it. If I die, I die. Big Boss and Lin, wait for me. Even though she knew that Lin was basically committing suicide, and she was terrified to death, she still couldn't help but follow along. Hey, underling Lan, don't pull on my sleeve. I'm scared. And Lin rolled his eyes before flying out of the battleship atop his brick. Their first stop was to search for the palace that had been destroyed. According to the description in the diary, the place where the blue figure appeared was right above the mushroom cloud. To be honest, Lin was starting to suspect that the palace was that mighty figure's home. That was why it had appeared as soon as the Starfire battleship blew up its home before destroying the entire Starfire battleship in a fit of rage. After all, its home had been razed to the ground, so it naturally had to retaliate. As a mighty figure, it couldn't just say that it was attacking its juniors in order to maintain its grandeur, so it had to come up with some excuse like, you don't belong to this world, before attacking my god. Thinking about it that way, it made a lot of sense. and Lin swallowed silently. There was a hint of hope in his nervousness. If it really was as he had guessed, then that mighty figure seemed to be more humane and easier to negotiate with. With these questions in mind, he searched the vast and boundless seabed for close to a day before finally discovering a place that appeared to have been blasted apart by a massive shockwave. However, at the center of the explosion, there was no massive crater. Instead, a brand new palace. Chapter 1068. A brand new palace had appeared in this place that had once been a pile of rubble, and Lin and Lan Xiaoni both realized what this entailed. Their hearts began to race as they stared at the underwater palace with nervous expressions. The palace was extremely massive with a width of over a kilometer. The main color scheme was white with white walls and red windows. The top of the palace shone with a faint luster in the inky black sea, as if it were a bright pearl in the darkness. They had only come here to try their luck, but they didn't think that they would discover a palace within the rubble of an explosion. Did that mysterious being have obsessive-compulsive disorder? Why did he have to build the palace at the site of the explosion? Couldn't he have chosen a different location? And Lin didn't dare to say anything even though he was grumbling internally. Big Boss and Lin, are you really going? Lan Xiaoni's voice trembled, and Lin nodded with a solemn expression. That's right. Don't worry, I still have many trump cards, so we have a very good chance of winning. Lan Xiaoni didn't know wherein Lin's confidence was coming from, but she could only nod with difficulty. She was trying to brainwash herself over and over again, reminding herself that Big Boss and Lin was invincible in order to bolster her courage. The two of them began to carefully approach the palace, and Lin tried to use his divine sense to probe the interior of the palace, only to be blocked by an invisible barrier. No matter how much his consciousness was amplified, he was unable to penetrate the outer wall of the palace. This palace really was something else, and Lin made his way over to the white gate and was just about to push it open when his hand faltered in midair. Lan Xiaoni was ecstatic to think that he was going to change his mind. Big Boss and Lin, we have plenty of time. Let's go back and think about it. There must be another way. And Lin pulled out the Gundams from his storage ring. Go, cannon fodder Gundams. Lan Xiaoni. That's right, and Lin didn't dare to take the risk himself, so he sent the Gundams to scout ahead. Gundams 1 and 2 were quite weak, so this was the only job they could do, and Lin and Lan Xiaoni silently retreated into the distance. They knew that in the face of a mighty figure like this, putting some distance between them was useless. The Gundams diligently pushed open the gate. Following a loud boom sound, the door was pushed open slowly. Gundam 1 and Gundam 2 were just about to scan the interior of the ship. Enemy. A faintly discernible voice suddenly sounded from within the palace. The two Gundams suddenly shuddered violently. Then, their super-alloy bodies began to disintegrate at a speed visible to the naked eye. Ka-ka-ka. Bang. Gundam 1 and Gundam 2 exploded. It wasn't an ordinary explosion. Instead, his entire body had exploded into tiny particles and was eventually annihilated in the deep sea. Not even a hair was left behind, and Lin and Lan Xiaoni both drew a sharp intake of breath upon seeing this. What happened just now? There were no energy fluctuations at all. Just a single sentence was enough to make the two Gundams explode. What he had heard was far less shocking than seeing it with his own eyes. And Lin, who was originally very confident, now felt an itch in his legs. Bah! It was a battle between two forces. Lan Xiaoni instinctively hid behind Lin. She was so scared. Just how powerful was this enemy to be able to unleash such a powerful attack? Furthermore, it had said enemy. Even when the Starfire battleship had blasted its home, it hadn't referred to the enemy as enemy. But now it was referring to the Gundams as enemies. Cold sweat poured down in Lin's face as a sense of horror welled up in his heart. He felt like he was in an even more dire situation than the people on the Starfire battleship. Regardless of whether it was the enemy's power or its attitude, and Lin was feeling extremely pressured. If the attack could really be detected, then the chaotic alloy brick and vermilion bird mirror would be able to defend against it. But if the two Gundams exploded from a single sentence, how was he supposed to defend against that? Wait, say a single sentence? A thought suddenly occurred to Enlin. Could it be that the enemy's attack had something to do with sound? A thought suddenly occurred to Enlin. Regardless of whether it was the Starfire battleship or the two Gundams, the enemy always had to say a single sentence before the other party reacted. When the two Gundams pushed open the door, they were clearly just weaklings who could be killed without even saying a single sentence, so why did it have to say that they were enemies? They were just robots, so why did it have to say a single sentence? Why did it have to say a single sentence? Could it be that the enemy liked to talk? That wasn't entirely impossible. Just as these thoughts were racing through Enlin's mind, a soft and gentle voice sounded from behind him. Big Boss Enlin, why are you still standing there? That door is closing on its own. Enlin abruptly raised his head to discover that the door that had just been opened was slowly closing. Should he continue onward, or should he go back and plan for the long haul? Going back and planning for the long haul was just bullsh*t. He was just hiding and waiting for his death. F***ck at all. A ferocious expression appeared on Enlin's face, and he was just about to step forward when a figure suddenly appeared before him, blocking his path. This was a dreamy blue figure, and it was impossible to see its shape or size. It was as if it had become one with the entire ocean, or as if it were heaven and earth itself. An indescribable feeling welled up in Enlin's heart. He stood rooted to the spot and stared blankly at the scenes unfolding before his eyes, not doing anything. It was as if Lan Xiaoni had seen the paramount god between heaven and earth, and her fishtail gave out as she slumped to the ground and hung her head, unable to even muster up the courage to look directly at it. Enlin knew that this was the mysterious enemy that had destroyed the Starfire battleship with just 2 sentences and killed the 2 Gundams with a single sentence. Who said they had to go find the enemy? They were right next to the palace, so the enemy could come and find them in person. Enlin had no choice but to muster up his courage. Calm down, senior. We bear no ill will toward you, so let's talk things over. He chose to explain the situation first, as he was afraid that the enemy would say things like destroy and enemies first. The blue figure was extremely dreamy and ethereal. It was impossible to tell whether it was round or square, let alone its facial features. However, Enlin could sense that the blue figure seemed to be focusing its attention on him. Gulp! Enlin swallowed in silence. He looked at the indistinguishable existence up ahead, and he straightened his back. He could be weak, but he couldn't lose in terms of aura. The blue figure slowly landed before materializing, and Lin's heart thumped in his chest. He didn't know what this enemy was trying to do, but he instinctively didn't dare to interrupt the blue figure's materialization process. In the end, the mysterious enemy materialized into a water humanoid with blurry facial features. At least he could see its shape and size. And Lin faltered slightly upon seeing this, clearly unsure of what this action entailed. In the next instant, the water humanoid extended a hand toward Lin and cocked its head to the side. Hello. Chapter 1069. Enlin and Lan Xiaoni's eyes widened in shock. What was this humanoid water creature doing? Was it expressing goodwill? Enlin didn't have the guts to refuse a handshake from a powerful being, so he immediately extended a hand to shake its hand. The hand was soft and smooth to the touch, and he felt as if he were shaking hands with a piece of jelly. Enlin didn't dare to shake it for too long, and he immediately withdrew his hand after expressing goodwill. In any case, this mysterious being's attitude toward him was quite good, and it was even better than what he had anticipated. To think that it would voluntarily shake his hand. Enlin was feeling quite elated, but at the same time, a cautious expression appeared on his face. Senior, can you take us back to our original world? He cut straight to the chase with a respectful expression. That's right. Even though he was a little flattered, he wasn't going to lose his bearings and forget what his true objective was. The humanoid water creature didn't say anything. Instead, it turned its head to look at Enlin. Its round head didn't have any eyes, but Lan Xiaoni could sense that the humanoid water creature was looking at her. An indistinct voice that could shake one's heart rang out once more. You don't belong here, you should. Before the humanoid water creature had a chance to finish its sentence, Enlin interjected. so we should go home. Please take us home, Senior. The humanoid water creature's body rippled slightly, and its head tilted to the side as if its thoughts had been disrupted as it fell into silence. In contrast, Enlin and Lan Xiaoni heaved heavy sighs of relief. What a familiar phrase. If the humanoid water creature had said, "You should disappear," then Lan Xiaoni would have been screwed. Thankfully, Enlin's interjection cut off the humanoid water creature's verbal barrage. Lan Xiaoni turned to Enlin with gratitude in her eyes. She knew that Enlin's words were extremely risky and could very well transfer the humanoid water creature's death onto her, but Enlin still did it without any hesitation. Enlin stared at the humanoid water creature with an extremely tense expression, fearful that it would say something terrifying again. After a moment, the humanoid water creature turned to Enlin. "You can't, that's right. I can't stay here. I should go back to my original world. Senior, can you help us go back?" Enlin interjected again. The waterman. Enlin's heart rate sped up, and he was extremely nervous. He was afraid that the humanoid water creature would say something that would determine whether he lived or died, so he decided to continue gagging the humanoid water creature. This was the third time he had emphasized that he wanted to return to his original world. He had already said important things 3 times, so this big boss should be able to understand his thoughts, right? They only hoped that the boss was in a good mood and was a kind-hearted person who could open a hole for them. And Lin looked carefully at the water figure with a beseeching expression. The humanoid water creature's emotions seemed to have become rather disjointed, and it stood rooted to the spot in a daze. After a moment, it spoke again. "I want a yes. You're going to take us out now, right?" Lin interrupted excitedly. The humanoid water creature, Lan Xiaoni, boss and Lin's desire to live was a little too strong. Paji. And Lin's body was suddenly flattened to the ground. He only felt an extremely terrifying suppressive force sweeping over, causing him to lose all movement. "It's over." And Lin's heart jolted with shock. The mysterious big boss was about to strike. Boss and Lin. Lan Xiaoni's expression shifted drastically upon seeing this, and she immediately rushed toward Enlin to face the humanoid water creature. Enlin wanted to say something to calm Lan Xiaoni down, but he discovered that all of his power had been sealed away, and he didn't even have the power to speak. He didn't even have the power to shut the humanoid water creature's mouth. This was truly a dire situation. The humanoid water creature nodded with satisfaction at the sight of Enlin sprawled to the ground before turning to Lan Xiaoni. "I want to complete my agreement with those 2 juniors." It looked at Lan Xiaoni, who was still standing resolutely in front of it with a pale face. "You don't belong here. You're the one those 2 juniors were referring to as the chosen one, right?" Lan Xiaoni's expression faltered, and she had yet to come to her senses. Lin. Stupid C*NT. Admit it. And Lin yelled at Lan Xiaoni in his heart. Lan Xiaoni's body shuddered, and she finally came to her senses before nodding instinctively. "That's right, I am a chosen one." The humanoid water creature nodded. "Your aptitude is also suitable. You are indeed a very good vessel." Wait, vessel? The name Chosen One sounded like a very powerful title, but it turned out that she was destined to be a vessel. Lan Xiaoni and Enlin were astonished again as a sense of foreboding welled up in their hearts. Lan Xiaoni was extremely remorseful. She opened her mouth and really wanted to say, "I lied to you," but her rationality told her that she would die even faster if she did that. The humanoid water creature extended 2 index fingers and tapped them together before separating them again. An unknown blue object appeared at the spot where the 2 fingers had parted. It was only the size of a fist, but it was ever-changing and illusory like water. Looking at it was like looking at a boundless ocean. The humanoid water creature waved a hand, and the unknown blue object instantly fused into Lan Xiaoni's forehead. Lan Xiaoni moaned in pain as she clasped her hands over her head, and her body trembled uncontrollably as her powerful aura swept through the ocean within a radius of over 50 kilometers. Her aura climbed steadily, and it became more and more powerful. Enlin was extremely anxious and concerned upon seeing this, and he frantically tried to break free from the seal on his body, causing his body to tremble uncontrollably. No, I can't let anything happen to Underling Lon. Get up, hurry up, and get moving. Boom. All of a sudden, an extremely terrifying power erupted into the sky. And Lin's eyes widened as he stared at the woman in the distance. A bright blue divine light emanated from Lan Xiaoni's body, and it was gentle yet vast. Her aura was as vast and boundless as the ocean, but also as unfathomably deep as a dragon pond. Not only that, but Lin could also sense a completely different type of power emanating from her body. It was as if she had transcended beyond this entire world. She was like a true god. Vessel, was she still Lan Xiaoni? The humanoid water creature seemed to have detected Lan Xiaoni's emotions. Lan Xiaoni turned around with a gentle smile on her face. Big boss and Lin, I'm fine. And Lin looked at the woman who was smiling at him to discover that there was a blue water droplet insignia on her snowy white forehead, from which a paramount divine power was exuding. He felt like this power was a little familiar. The humanoid water creature nodded with elation at the sight of Lan Xiaoni. Very good. Everything went very smoothly. It's time for you to carry out your duty. Go back now. Lan Xiaoni and Lin were ecstatic to hear this, even though the entire process had been very confusing and inexplicable. However, this mysterious being had finally decided to send them back. This was fantastic news. The humanoid water creature pointed a finger at a certain spot in the ocean, and a blue passageway between the two worlds suddenly appeared. It spoke, "Go, my chosen one. Conquer the West Sea and wipe the entire human race from the face of the Tai Chu continent." Chapter 1070. Rule over the West Sea. Wipe out the entire human race from the face of the Tai Chu continent. And Lin and Lan Xiaoni were both dumbstruck by the humanoid water creature's final sentence. This was the duty of the chosen one. This be asterisk starred wanted Lan Xiaoni to rule over the West Sea, wipe out the entire human race. And Lin couldn't help but burst into laughter. Setting aside just how outrageous this request was, just Lan Xiaoni's unreliable personality alone would probably make it impossible for her to rule over the Spirit Fish clan. Perhaps the humanoid water creature had said everything it needed to say, but the restriction on Lin's body also disappeared. And Lin abruptly stood up and pinched Lan Xiaoni's soft cheeks. "What are you doing?" Lan Xiaoni recoiled slightly as a blush appeared on her face. And Lin heaved a sigh of relief. "Thank God you're still the same underling Lan." Lan Xiaoni was a little touched by this, but she maintained a cold expression. "It's time to carry out my mission. Let's go." And Lin nodded with a serious expression. "Let's go back." The most important thing now was to return to their original world. The passageway between the two worlds opened up by the humanoid water creature was their last chance to leave this accursed place. As for whether it was a blessing or a curse that Lan Xiaoni had been tasked with such an important mission, he would have to think about it after he got back. The two of them knew that there was no time to lose, and they immediately made their way toward the passageway between the two worlds. All of a sudden, the humanoid water creature appeared in front of the passageway before pointing a finger at Lin. "You're not going to stay here?" And Lin was at a loss upon hearing this. This question was so King weird. Why would he want to stay here? He forced a smile onto his face. "Senior, I still have some matters to attend to, so I have to go back now." The humanoid water creature stared at Lin with its eyeless eyes. The atmosphere suddenly became a little terrifying. After a short while, the humanoid water creature suddenly nodded. "I see, I understand now." And Lin, "What do you understand?" The humanoid water creature abruptly made a grabbing motion toward a certain spot in the ocean, and the entire ocean surged violently as the water surged and churned, as if the entire world were trembling. And Lin's heart jolted as he stared at the humanoid water creature with a dumbstruck expression. Soon, a blue ball of light flew over from afar before landing in the water humanoid's hand. "You have things to do, so I won't keep you. I don't have anything to give you either. This is a small boat that came here a long time ago. It looks pretty good, so I'll give it to you." The humanoid water creature waved a hand, and the blue ball of light floated toward Enlin. Enlin accepted the blue ball of light with a dumbfounded expression. His mouth moved as an absurd thought rose up in his mind. He could not help but ask, "The Starfire battleship?" The humanoid water creature nodded with a smile and said, "That's right, it's a pretty good toy. I hope you like it." Speaking of which, it was strange. He clearly couldn't see the other party's face. However, Enlin felt like the water person was smiling, and it was a very bright and friendly smile. "This toy is all right." Enlin nodded before quickly getting into character and stowing the ball of light into his storage ring with a nonchalant expression. Holy F*** CK. This was a strategic weapon comparable to a Dao integration stage super mighty figure. This humanoid water creature was describing it as a toy. Did it have to be so provocative? Even though he was extremely astonished, his expression was as calm as an old dog's. A smile appeared on his face. "I have to do what I have to do now. Bye." He didn't know what the humanoid water creature had misunderstood, but all he had to do now was play along. The humanoid water creature stepped aside to create a path for them. "Go. This world will be a better place." And Lin's lips twitched, and he held on to Lan Xiaoni's little hand as he plunged into the blue hole between the two realms, within the secret stone chamber of the fallen god seabed tomb. The statue of the giant tortoise and the merman sat opposite each other, panting heavily, as if they had just completed an extremely strenuous exercise. Both of them were a bit limp. They were none other than the former high priests of the Heavenly Turtle Tribe and the Spirit Fish Clan, Tian Qinji and Shi Haizi. In front of them, there was a white humanoid creature that was emitting powerful energy fluctuations. A return of Void Stage clone is finally complete. Shi Haizi smiled. A content smile appeared on Tian Qinji's face. "This is the result of our combined efforts." A concerned expression appeared on Shi Haizi's face. That human by the name of Enlin is more powerful than even the average return to Void Stage mighty figure. Is it really going to be okay to let him in? Tian Qinji chuckled coldly. "Don't worry, it won't be a problem. It's already been over a dozen days, and they've already become a pile of dirt. The white humanoids' only mission is to retrieve their treasures. There are treasures from our tomb in their storage rings, so we definitely can't lose them." Shi Haizi nodded. This batch of fated people was too naughty, so it was fine if they died. They could continue to give out keys, but the next batch of fated people couldn't just leave without any treasures, right? They had to continue to pick out fated people, and they couldn't afford to give out gifts. This was the reason why he and Tian Qinji had chosen to create humans. "We actually don't have much authority over that place, and you can't see what's going on inside, so you can only give orders to the Star Dancer." "What if Enlin isn't dead?" Shi Haizi was still a little concerned. There's no way they won't discover the Starfire battleship once they get there. Once they discover the Starfire battleship, they'll definitely engage in battle with the Star Dancer. Do you think the Star Dancer and the Starfire battleship won't be able to kill Enlin? Tian Qinji was clearly very confident in her ability to do so. Shi Haizi thought about it for a moment before realizing that she was right. "I'm overthinking things. Let's let the white humanoid collect the treasures now." Tian Qinji nodded and was just about to open up the spatial passageway between the two worlds. All of a sudden, a blue hole appeared within the chamber. Tian Qinji and Shi Haizi were both given a fright upon seeing this. Shi Haizi's eyes widened. "This is a spatial passageway between the two worlds?" Tian Qinji took a deep breath. "This aura, there's no mistaking it. This is a spatial passageway that connects to that world. Aside from me having the authority to open this passage, there's only one other possibility. The god inside opened it of its own accord." Both Tian Qinji and Shi Haizi's expressions became extremely grave as they spoke. Could it be that it wants to come out? Shi Haizi was a little fearful. "That's impossible. It can't come out yet." Tian Qinji shook her head in denial. She then suddenly thought of a possibility, and a smile appeared on her face. Could it be that it took the initiative to deliver Enlin's storage ring to us? This was actually quite a reasonable speculation. After all, their interests were intertwined, so it was only natural for it to assist them. It couldn't come to this world, but it could toss its storage ring into this world. Thus, Tianqinji and Shihaizi both turned toward the hole. Immediately afterward, the two high priests' eyes widened in shock as they stared at the hole with incredulity on their faces. A voice sounded from within the spatial passageway. Hee, you've guessed wrongly. Not only did it take the initiative to deliver your storage ring, but it also delivered your daddy and back to you. Chapter 1071. Within the blue spatial passageway, Lin and Lan Xiaoni had returned, and the two high priestesses were instantly intimidated by their domineering auras. This wasn't because they were all that bad *SS. It was just that it was simply too incredible for something like this to happen at a time like this. Shihaizi and Tianqinji didn't even respond to Lin's provocation. Instead, they were still staring at Lin and Lan Xiaoni with astonishment on their faces, as if they had become stone statues again. After the two of them emerged from the spatial passageway, the blue spatial passageway began to disappear. This proved that they really had been sent back by that being. Tianqinji craned her neck as she murmured to herself, "How could this be? The star dancer didn't stop you? I didn't acknowledge you. So how did you receive that being's approval? And it even personally sent you back?" She had too many questions in her mind, and her thoughts were in complete disarray. However, only an idiot would pay attention to this turtle's words. After Tianqinji finished speaking, she was greeted by the sight of two fleeing figures. "Don't run!" Tianqinji let loose an enraged roar as she unleashed a spatial seal. However, Lin was already prepared, and his origin energy of the netherworld surged explosively as his realm-piercing nail transformed into a streak of red light, which pierced through Tianqinji's spatial seal. Lin had only just broken through the spatial seal when a powerful white figure pounced toward him. Ring, ring. The pristine white human pounced with a greedy expression, and his hands were like bolts of white lightning as he grabbed toward the storage ring in Lin's hand. Lin's expression froze. How the F***CK could he tolerate an enemy who was trying to steal his financial report? F***CK off. He let loose an enraged roar as he unleashed his Earth Lotus Supreme skill in his origin energy of the netherworld form, upon which he launched a mountain-quaking fist toward the white human's head. Bam! The terrifying power behind the fist shattered the space around the white human's head, which he didn't have time to evade, and his head was instantly pulverized. Blood exploded, and the white human's vitality was also severed in that instant. My bye-bye. Be **starred. Tianqinji screamed at the top of her lungs, and her eyes burned with uncontrollable fury. The white man was the fruit of her and Shihaizi's laborious efforts over a dozen days. However, it had only been alive for 2 hours before it was crushed by Lin. This was an extremely heavy blow to her. All of you stay here. Shihaizi stepped forward, and his power of the divine Tao transformed into a massive wave that was capable of engulfing and destroying all things before sweeping toward Lin and Lan Xiaoni at an extremely fast speed. The massive wave of the divine Tao was imbued with the power of frost and water, and it was powerful enough to engulf any return to void stage mighty figure. The huge wave was surging much faster than their escape speed. Moreover, it sealed off all the space to escape. It was like a huge palm that reached the heavens, about to mercilessly slap down. I can't escape. Lin's expression changed, and he prepared to fight to the death. Right at this moment, a blue shadow rushed in front of him. When Lin saw this, he shouted, "Little brother Lan, have you gone insane? Get back here." Lan Xiaoni extended a slender arm toward the massive wave of the divine Tao, and she spoke in a soft voice that was imbued with a hint of divine nature. "Stop." The massive wave of the divine Tao that was sweeping toward them with unstoppable force suddenly froze on the spot, like a painting scroll, as if it had received some sort of supreme command. Lin's mouth gaped open in shock upon seeing this. Shihaizi and Tianqinji were even more astonished. At this moment, a blue water droplet appeared on Lan Xiaoni's forehead, and a paramount divine might erupted from her body, making her appear as if she were a goddess looking down upon the ants of this world. Divine break. Lan Xiaoni thrust her palm forward. Boom! The massive wave of the divine Tao roared with rage in that instant, before changing directions and crashing toward Shi Haizi and Tian Qinji. Holy F***CK. This. Shi Haizi was dumbstruck, and he forgot to do anything. This power was too F***king familiar. He recalled back to the horror of being dominated by the ancient heavenly fiend celestial. Tian Qinji hurriedly constructed a starlight barrier, but that barrier was no match for Shi Haizi's massive wave of divine Tao. A crisp explosion erupted, and the divine Tao wave engulfed Shi Haizi and Tian Qinji. The cavernous room was instantly transformed into a vast ocean. Massive waves surged as destructive power surged through the air, killing all living beings within it. Lan Xiaoni slowly withdrew her palm, and her hair danced in the wind. In Lin's eyes, her petite, snowy white back had become extremely reliable. Lin was a little dazed. Underling Lan, who would usually hide behind him with a cowardly expression, was now standing in front of him and repelling the two high priestesses, thereby becoming his backer. This. Are you F***king hacking? Lin couldn't help but exclaim in shock. Lan Xiaoni turned her head to the side. The blue water droplets were still exuding a divine glow, making her features appear even more holy and beautiful. She glared at Lin and snapped. It wasn't easy for me to become so powerful. Can't you say something nice? Lin faltered slightly before giving her a thumbs up. Underling Lan is the best. Lan Xiaoni was hoping that Lin would say something along the lines of Little and I didn't think that you would become my backer, but it looked like she was overthinking things and Lin was quite innocent. He had always been the one flexing, and it had been a long time since he had complimented someone. He really didn't know what the correct way to compliment someone was. Water splashed violently. Shi Haizi roared with rage as he jumped out. Lan Xiaoni's expression shifted, and she dragged Lin along as she fled toward the door of the room. What are you waiting for? Run. Lin was perplexed. You're already so bad *SS. Why are we still running? Lan Xiaoni transmitted her voice to Lin secretly. I've obtained some kind of divine power that allows me to control all water-type spell techniques. However, I won't be able to defend against other types of spells. Lin came to a sudden realization upon hearing this. So that was the case. But this type of power, why did it sound so familiar? Suddenly, he thought of his lightning manipulation technique, and Lin turned to her with a serious expression. Underling Lan, you're not using any hacks. Tell me the truth. Did you obtain some kind of system? Lan Xiaoni was dumbstruck. What? And Lin, all right, it looked like he had misunderstood. He couldn't help but think of the ancient heavenly fiend celestial again. In the diary, the star dancer had described the ancient heavenly fiend celestial as the true ruler of the ocean, and that it could use any water-type spell technique for its own use. As for Lan Xiaoni, Lin fell into deep thought. He had to ponder over the mysterious being's words. The two of them began to rush into the passageway toward the exit of the tomb. Behind them, the two high priests were still chasing after them. However, Shi Haizi suddenly grabbed Tian Qinji's arm halfway through. What is it? If we don't give chase now, they're going to get away. Tian Qinji was perplexed. Shi Haizi took a deep breath. I think we made a mistake. Chapter 1072. Tian Qinji was perplexed. What did we do wrong? Shi Haizi looked on at the passageway that Lin and Lan Xiaoni had escaped through. Back then, we made a divination and discovered that a new star would appear in the future. She would inherit everything we have here and carry out that mission. Then, she would lead our two tribes into a new era. Why can't this new star be her? A smile suddenly appeared on Shi Haizi's face. Her? Tian Qinji was a little angry. She's disrespectful to our ancestors and doesn't abide by the rules of the tomb. How could she be the mermaid who carries the heavy responsibility of our two tribes? Shi Haizi was not enraged. Instead, a carefree smile appeared on his face. It's exactly because she doesn't abide by the rules that she's the fated one that we need. Only a mermaid like her can lead our two tribes into a new era. If she didn't abide by the rules, she wouldn't even be able to obtain the secrets of our two tribes, right? Tian Qinji fell silent. Shi Haizi continued. As a result, not only did she and that man obtain the ancient tomb's treasures, but they also obtained the secrets of the two tribes. She even obtained the power of that god. Isn't that enough to prove that she's the new star we're looking for? So be it. Perhaps you're right. The flowers turn green when spring arrives. The leaves fall when autumn arrives. The boundless Prajna heart is at ease. The body moves in silence. Everything in this world is a result of fate. I acknowledge them. Tian Qinji thought back to the image that Shi Haizi had shown her, and she finally heaved a forlorn sigh before nodding in agreement. In that image, there was a hideous mermaid riddled with wounds. She gripped her divine Tao spear tightly, and there was an unyielding determination in her eyes. It was very difficult to imagine that a frail and cowardly mermaid princess would have this kind of expression in her eyes. Haizi, then our inheritances, give them everything. All right, which one will you choose? I choose that adorable mermaid princess. Seeing as she already has the power of a god, she should be able to completely inherit my spirit fish water type inheritance. Do I have to give my inheritance to that human with my current power? Ha! He's lucky. Tian Qinji's voice became softer and softer, and her body started to petrify. A white orb of light flew toward the tunnel at a terrifying speed. Shi Haizi sat on the huge stone turtle, and his vitality had been severed. A blue ball of light appeared and chased after the white ball of light toward the passageway at an extremely fast speed. At the same time, Lin and Lan Xiaoni were still fleeing from their pursuers. They had already arrived at the three-way junction and were still a short distance away from escaping from the tomb. Suddenly, Lin seemed to have sensed something. He turned around, and his expression changed greatly. Watch out! The white ball of light rushed toward him at an extremely fast speed. In the nick of time, he took out the chaotic alloy brick without hesitation and placed it in front of him. The black brick was said to be indestructible and indestructible. As a result, the white ball of light collided with the black brick and was heavily injured. Tian Qinji. Lan Xiaoni screamed at the sight of the blue ball of light hurtling toward her. Her divine might instantly erupted forth as she swatted a palm toward the blue ball of light. She could control all water-type spells, including water-type inherited spells. Therefore, Paji, the blue ball of light was slapped away, and it was also heavily injured. Shi Haizi, the two of them began to doubt their own judgment for the first time. Their inherited spell techniques had an extremely high accuracy rate, but they were blocked at the same time. How the F***CK could they be considered fated people? The white ball of light shuddered violently before flying in a 180-degree arc toward Lin's back. Lin's expression shifted drastically, and he tried to change the direction of the black brick. However, the white ball of light was simply too fast, and it instantly fused into his back without any hesitation. Boom! A vast amount of information and spell technique true intent exploded in his mind. Shi Haizi's eyes lit up slightly upon seeing what the white ball of light was doing, and he tried to emulate it by flying in a wide arc toward Lan Xiaoni's back. And then, he was astonished to discover that he was unable to move. That's right, he had been controlled by Lan Xiaoni, and had become Lan Xiaoni's spell technique. Shi Haizi. He was clearly trying to bestow all of his inheritances upon them, only to find that his inheritances had been blocked, slapped away, and controlled. What kind of tragedy was this? Fated people? My A** guess. Shi Haizi was definitely not going to admit to this. He was going to leave. Unfortunately, he was unable to move, and Lin suddenly moaned. Phew. Big Boss and Lin, are you all right? Lan Xiaoni turned to Lin with a concerned expression. I'm fine. That ball of light seems to be harmless. I received Tian Qinji's inheritance. And Lin hesitated momentarily before replying with a peculiar expression. Lan Xiaoni's mouth gaped open in disbelief. Senior Tian Qingji's inheritance? They were hunting us down just a second ago, and now they're suddenly giving us inheritances? Have they gone insane? And Lin nodded. They're probably insane. I knew they were temperamental and unreasonable a long time ago, but it looks like they really are crazy. The blue ball of light flared up with rage. Crazy my asterisk guess. You're bad-mouthing me like this, and I'm going to give you my inheritance? Dream on. He was enraged, but he still couldn't move. You received Senior Tian Qingji's inheritance, so this should be Senior Shihaizi's inheritance? That should be the case. It would be a waste not to accept it. All right, I'm looking forward to it. Thus, the blue ball of light fell under Lan Xiaoni's control with a despairing expression, and it crashed into Lan Xiaoni's body. After a while, Lan Xiaoni opened her bright eyes. Big Boss and Lin turned to the beautiful mermaid beside him. What is it? Senior Shihaizi is so generous. Lan Xiaoni exclaimed in amazement. And Lin, Senior Shihaizi will definitely be very happy to see you so happy, and Lin said with a smile. Lan Xiaoni and Lin both extended an earnest bow toward the tomb to express their gratitude. In any case, they were very grateful to receive the acknowledgement of the two high priestesses. After doing all that, they continued onward. They passed through the spatial gate at the end of the passageway and finally exited the tomb and returned to the depths of the West Sea. I'm finally out, Lan Xiaoni yelled with elation as she swam through the water with her long, slender tail. And Lin also heaved a long sigh of relief, and his entire body felt very relaxed. After going through so many battles and encountering so many perilous situations, they were finally back. Even though this trip to the tomb was extremely perilous, they had also reaped many rewards, so Lin was very satisfied. Everything that I've been through feels like a dream. Lan Xiaoni sighed with emotion as she spread open her arms and closed her eyes to breathe, as if she were embracing the entire ocean. And Lin smiled. Let's go up. It's time to unlock the secrets on the turtle shell. All right, Lan Xiaoni replied obediently before swimming toward the surface of the West Sea with Lin. Chapter 1073. Within a certain mysterious region of the West Sea on the Taichu continent, close to 20 days had passed since Lin and Lan Xiaoni had entered the tomb. High Priest Guyu of the Heavenly Turtle Tribe was lying on the surface of the water in a leisurely manner, waiting for the results. High Priest Yu Feiyu of the Spirit Fish Clan raised his palms to the sky, and a vibrant smile appeared on his face as the colorful ball of water in his hands trembled. The exit of the tomb has been opened, and they're coming back. Oh, that's faster than I expected. Guyu also smiled. Both of the high priests were elated. The fact that the tomb had been opened meant that they had returned safely. As such, it was very likely that they would be able to obtain information that concerned the fate and future of their two tribes. This was fantastic news for both of their tribes. Space split open, and 3 powerful Spirit Fish Clan living beings emerged from within. The blue-haired, golden-eyed man at the front of the group burst into hearty laughter. Ha ha! I just performed a divination, and today is the day my daughter returns home. How could I miss an occasion like this? This was none other than the leader of the Spirit Fish Clan, a Dao integration stage, super mighty figure, Lan Xingyang. A yellow-haired young man rolled his eyes. Dad, why do you need to perform a divination for something like this? You only found out about this because the power of the tomb and the Hong Meng sacrificial altar is no longer being maintained. Lan Xingyang unnoticeably glared at the yellow-haired young man who liked to undermine him. At this moment, a handsome Spirit Fish Clan man spoke with a smile. I'm sure our little sister is going to bring us some surprises after a safe return. Guyu laughed heartily upon hearing this. Are you kidding me? That mermaid princess who was scared to tears at the sight of Lin is going to bring you surprises? Bring back a brick or 2 from the tomb. Ha ha ha! The Spirit Fish Clan had already learned of Lin's identity through some means. As such, Guyu couldn't be bothered to hide Lin's identity, so he just referred to him by his name. Lan Xingyang and the other living beings should be aware of the massive power gap between Enlin and Lan Xiaoni, even without Guyu's reminder. Yet, they were still holding out hope for Lan Xiaoni. The yellow-haired mermaid nodded in agreement. I think Senior Guyu is right. With Big Sister's powers, it's already a miracle that she didn't die in the tomb. Yet you're still thinking that there's going to be a pleasant surprise? What are you thinking? The handsome merman chuckled. Because my father said so, and so did High Priest Yufeiyu. I deduced it based on their words. Why? Is there a problem? The yellow-haired merman. Brother, do you have some kind of misunderstanding about the concept of deduction? Meanwhile, Lan Xingyang smiled and said, Lan Xiaowang, your brother is right. This is called a double similarity deduction, and it's deducing based on what we've said. It's very high-end. Asterisk hiss. Asterisk, everyone sucked in a breath of cold air, not knowing what was going on. Tina and the jade-bone immortal bug stared at the family before them with astonishment etched on their faces. Are they really the best in astrology? Why do you look like a fraud? At this moment, Yufeiyu couldn't help but say, Guyu, you're too short-sighted. Your current strength isn't a reflection of your future strength. Lan Xiaoni possesses the great fortune of the Spirit Fish clan. So how can a human from another tribe compare? Guyu shook his head with a calm expression. How would you know what I saw? No matter who it is, as long as they can lead the Heavenly Turtle tribe out of this perilous situation and into a new era, then our tribe will support them. Both sides expressed their stances, and it was quite clear that they were on opposing sides. At this moment, a burst of water erupted. The main characters that both sides were looking forward to finally appeared. A smile appeared on Lan Xingyang's face. Xiaoni, you're finally back. Are you all right? The smile on his face widened at the sight of Lan Xiaoni. Giant and Lin, Master, the two beast pets also flew toward the man. Mr. Lin, how was your trip? Guyu asked with a smile. It was quite a fruitful trip. A smug smile appeared on Lin's face. Guyu and the others were ecstatic to hear this. Meanwhile, High Priest Yufeiyu turned to Lan Xiaoni with a nervous expression. I'm fine, father. I also reaped some rewards. A sweet smile appeared on Lan Xiaoni's face. Lan Xingyang was ecstatic to hear this. Oh, what kind of rewards? Were they treasures left behind by the two high priests, or some important information regarding the two tribes? The treasures and information are all in Big Boss and Lin's hands. Lan Xiaoni replied with an awkward smile. Lan Xingyang's lips twitched upon hearing this. What the F***? The treasures and information were all in Lin's hands. How could this be considered a reward? However, Lan Xiaoni suddenly realized something. Wait, Big Sister, you just said Big Boss and Lin. Did I hear you correctly? Everyone suddenly came to a realization as they turned to Lan Xiaoni with astonishment on their faces. A bright blush appeared on Lan Xiaoni's face, and she stuttered as she explained, Big Boss and Lin took special care of me in the tomb, so that's why I called him that, and Lin nodded in acknowledgement. That's right. Let me introduce Lan Xiaoni to everyone. She is my new underling. Yufeiyu's rainbow water ball almost fell into the ocean upon hearing this. Lan Xingyang drew a sharp intake of breath. Guyu abruptly slapped his own head. Is there something wrong with this development? I clearly divined that Lan Xiaoni was Lin's most powerful enemy. Have I gone senile with age? Everyone was astonished, as well as High Priest Guyu, who had fallen in his self-doubt. However, Tina and the Jade-Bone immortal bug didn't find this strange. After all, Lin's habit of accepting underlings was still there. This was a completely normal occurrence. Master, our big family has a new member. Giant and Lin, which team does Big Sister Mermaid belong to? A servant, a beast pet, or a disciple? She doesn't belong to any of those teams. I didn't sign a contract with her, so it's just a verbal promise. Lin explained. Lan Xiaoni took a glance at Lin before turning to Lan Xingyang with a hint of unease on her face. Lan Xingyang took a deep breath and finally came back to his senses. He reluctantly accepted that he had turned an enemy into a friend. His daughter had become the underling of the man who had indirectly killed her fiancé. As long as his daughter didn't mind, he couldn't be bothered to say anything. As for how the Black Fox tribe would feel, there were chess pieces that he was planning to discard after using anyway, so he didn't care at all. Lan Xingyang opened his mouth before asking, "Didn't you say that he took a lot of care of you? Why are all the treasures and information with him? Big Boss and Lin kept me safe." A sweet smile appeared on Lan Xiaoni's face. Lan Xingyang, big brother and little brother. Speaking of which, the tomb would still attack him if you died. That didn't mean anything. Countless stars flashed through Yu Feiyu's eyes as she silently scanned Lan Xiaoni's entire body. That's strange. She didn't fall under any hypnotic spell techniques. Chapter 1074. Everyone seemed to be struggling to accept this development. Oh, that's right, I also obtained Shi Haizi's complete water-type inheritance in the tomb. Lan Xiaoni continued with a smile. This time, all of the Spirit Fish Clan cultivators suddenly became excited. You obtained Senior Shi Haizi's water-type inheritance? Yu Feiyu was elated. That's right. A faint smile appeared on Lan Xiaoni's face. She wasn't going to tell these people that she had almost destroyed Shi Haizi's inheritance. Lan Xingyang was ecstatic. Haha, Xiaoni, who would have thought that you would receive the approval of the former high priest, Shi Haizi? Well done. You are the future hope of our Spirit Fish Clan. To Lan Xingyang, the complete inheritance of the high priestess was much more valuable than all those random treasures. A gratified smile appeared on her big brother's face. He didn't think that big sister Salted Fish would be so successful. All of the Spirit Fish Clan members were elated, and the atmosphere was very joyous. A faint smile appeared on Lan Xiaoni's face as she looked at her elated family and seniors. She actually had an even more important reward that she hadn't mentioned. However, that power involved far too many things, such as the ancient heavenly fiend celestial, the two major tribes of the West Sea, the human race. Everything was shrouded in mystery. And Lin and her had agreed to keep that power a secret for now, and they would decide whether or not to disclose it to the public after they unraveled the oracle bone inscriptions on Tian Shinji's back. There was also something else that Lin was very concerned about. The humanoid water creature had told Lan Xiaoni to destroy the human race, but Lin was also a human, so why didn't the humanoid water creature kill him first? It was like a general sending people to destroy an enemy army. Then, there was a known enemy general sitting off to the side, but the general chose to ignore him and even engage in small talk. Was this selective blindness? Mr. Lin, don't be too dejected. It's just an inheritance, and the inheritance of our West Sea might not be suitable for you. It's best for you to take the treasure trove. Guyu offered words of consolation. I'm actually quite satisfied. Even though the inheritance of the West Sea isn't very useful, Senior Tian Shinji still gave it to me, and Lin replied. Guyu, Lan Xingyang, Yu Feiyu. He's just a human, but he was able to obtain the inheritance of the high priestess of the heavenly turtle tribe. How'd he do that? Yu Feiyu was extremely excited. Let's not talk about anything else. Right now, I just want to kill this pretentious prick. Lan Xingyang said solemnly. No, father. Lan Xiaoni stepped forward. My face hurts a little. Please, can't you tell me what you've learned? Guyu said angrily as he rubbed his face. The atmosphere suddenly became very tense. They had thought that they were evenly matched, but it turned out that Lin had what Lan Xiaoni didn't have. Lin had everything that Lan Xiaoni had. Ahem. Senior Guyu, how about we decipher the secrets of the two races first? Lin changed the subject. As soon as he said that, everyone present became excited. That was something that the two former high priests had told them. It was an important piece of information that concerned the future of the two races. How could I not take it seriously? Don't panic. Based on my calculations, the day after tomorrow is the best time to reveal this secret. Lan Xingyang urged. Lin was astonished. Did they have to pick a good day to reveal this secret? Yu Feiyu nodded in agreement. Indeed, the day after tomorrow is the best time. Why don't you all come to the Sea Heart Palace and wait patiently? We'll be sure to entertain all of you. Guyu chuckled coldly. Don't even think about tricking me into going to your formation. Do you think I'm stupid? This secret was discovered by Mr. and Lin, so it's not up to you to decide when to reveal it. Not only were Lan Xingyang and Yu Feiyu not enraged by this, but they even made their way over to him. Lan Xingyang chuckled. All right, fellow Taoist Gu Yu is right. Let's go to your moving heavenly star island. Mr. and Lin, I'll accompany you for a few days. Yu Feiyu floated toward Lin with a gentle smile on her face, as if she were a gentle big sister. And Lin was astonished once again. How could she be so shameless? She was a Tao integration stage, super mighty figure. Don't degrade yourself. And Lin had underestimated just how attractive this secret was to the two tribes of the West Sea. For the future of their tribes, what was dignity? And Lin didn't really care about this. After all, the secret belonged to the Heavenly Turtle tribe and the Spirit Fish clan to begin with. He only wanted to know what the secret was, so he didn't mind sharing it with the two tribes. That was what he thought, but that didn't mean that the Heavenly Turtle tribe thought the same. Guyu was about to explode with rage, and it immediately called for help via voice transmission talisman in an attempt to get rid of these clingy little monsters by force. This secret was extremely important to it. Lan Xingyang spoke with a pained expression. Mr. Guyu, the patriarchs have already said that this secret pertains to the fate and future of our two tribes. We should work together and fight together. What you're doing is going against the original intent of our patriarchs. Guyu chuckled coldly. Don't use our patriarchs to intimidate me. We can reveal the secret, but the Heavenly Turtle tribe has to see it first. What if it's a supreme treasure or inheritance that can rule over the West Sea? There's a huge difference between the Heavenly Turtle tribe spirit and the Spirit Fish clan spirit. It didn't hide its thoughts, and it continued. The Heavenly Turtle tribe doesn't want to compete with the rest of the world, but we also don't want to be oppressed by the Spirit Fish clan. And Lin and Lan Xiaoni looked at one another with peculiar expressions on their faces. If it really was about ruling over the West Sea, Senior Guyu, you've already lost before even seeing the secret. With the help of Lan Xiaoni, the Heavenly Turtle tribe could only become an Lin's underling in the future, and then Lan Xiaoni would become an Lin's underling. The hierarchy of the West Sea had instantly become shrimp soldiers, crab generals, sea monsters, Heavenly Turtle tribe, Spirit Fish clan, and Enlin. TSK, TSK, TSK. He was getting a little excited just thinking about it. No one knew about the ecstasy in Enlin's heart aside from Lan Xiaoni. Lan Xiaoni couldn't help but roll her eyes at the sight of Enlin's expression. The two sides were still bickering. Guyu really wanted to get rid of Lan Xingyang and Yu Feiyu. However, the Spirit Fish clan was adamant in their refusal to leave. Two Tao integration stage, super mighty figures were determined to stay with Guyu, and this was an extremely depressing situation. There was no way to get rid of them. Not long after that, a group of powerful reinforcements arrived from the Heavenly Turtle tribe. However, aside from standing off to the side, they didn't do anything. They weren't mortal enemies, so they couldn't fight. Guyu couldn't get rid of these two Tao integration stage super mighty figures, so it could only find a relatively large island in the middle of the ocean to open the secret. The overlord of the island, the mountain giant, pounced over, only to be slapped flying by Lan Xiaoni. Everyone waited on the island for 2 days, waiting for the legendary good day. Night fell. The bright moon hung high in the sky, and countless stars shone down. And Lin stood on the beach and silently pulled out a photographic crystal as he looked at the mighty figures around him. It was now time to reveal the secret. Chapter 1075. The photographic crystal in the sky exploded and was reduced to dust that dissipated into the sea breeze. It said that it can bestow that paramount power upon a supremely talented junior from one of the two tribes as long as that junior can help it do one thing, and that is to unify the West Sea and destroy the human race. My God, it's a 6 revolution star script. F***CK off. Why don't you take a piss and look at yourself in the mirror? 2 arms and a tail. How disgusting. And Lin stood on the beach and attracted the attention of all of the mighty figures of the two tribes again. Guyu and Yu Feiyu wore extremely grave expressions as they silently set up a new enchantment barrier to keep out most of the mighty figures, leaving only a few core members within. Guyu spoke in a slow voice. I'm sure everyone remembers the ancient heavenly fiend celestial. It was a terrifying being that almost flipped the entire West Sea upside down. Boom! After Tian Qinji and Shi Haizi slayed the ancient heavenly fiend celestial deep within the West Sea, they discovered a peculiar power tearing through space and fleeing into the outside world. They chased after that peculiar power and crossed the passageway between the two worlds, arriving in an unfamiliar world. That world was constructed from boundless seawater, and it was the world that the ancient heavenly fiend celestial once resided in. Yu Feiyu looked at Guyu. Do you want to speak? Or should I? The high priestess, Guyu, and Yu Feiyu, who were the most proficient in astrology, stood nervously on either side of Enlin as they stared intently at the photographic crystal in Enlin's hand. This was the fiend celestial that had brought them nightmares and terror. You're asking me? Who am I supposed to ask? Was he trying to destroy the secret in broad daylight? For hours later, the two high priestesses completed their analysis at almost the exact same time. Lan Xiaoni then secretly transmitted the information to Enlin through voice transmission. Guyu was busy deciphering the information and had no time to pay attention to Enlin. This was an extremely important matter for the two tribes of the West Sea, so there were naturally many mighty figures involved. However, Yu Feiyu had a habit of recording key words as she deciphered the information. Lan Xingyang, Lan Xiaoni, and the other pure-blooded direct descendants had the right to see what Yu Feiyu was recording. Enlin, on the other hand, stood rooted to the ground with a dumbfounded look on his face. He hadn't even cracked the code yet, but he already couldn't understand what they were saying. Yu Feiyu and Guyu had already activated their divine Dao enchantment barriers. Their eyes reflected the starry sky, the ocean, and the oracle bone inscriptions, and they rapidly deciphered the information. God took that strange power away. He was initially very angry and wanted to kill Shi Haizi and Tian Qinji. However, he made a deal with Shi Haizi and Tian Qinji. Why does it want us to do this? A heavenly turtle tribe mighty figure asked. Outside the barrier, the big shot sighed. They had been excited for nothing. In the end, they didn't even have the chance to watch the show. The people outside the barrier wanted to enter, but the people inside the barrier were extremely nervous. And Lin could compare this information with Guyu's analysis to see if there were any discrepancies. This was quite an exciting process. This time, the supreme beings of the two races were even more dumbfounded. F***CK. Could it be that they didn't even have the right to hear a secret? What was the secret? Why was it so important? Hence, the Tai Chu continent's heavenly Tao underwent a certain transformation, and it began to possess a consciousness of its own. It scattered the power of the heavenly Tao outside of this realm in order to adjust itself. In the end, they saw God. That's right, it wasn't a self-proclaimed God. Instead, they believed that if there were gods in this world, then this God was a true God. Senior Guyu, please go ahead. And Lin interjected. Guyu nodded. Then I'll go first. Before I reveal this secret, I hope that all of you can swear Tao heart vows that you won't reveal this secret to anyone. The star chart, sea chart, and text chart, how to branch and combine them is also a difficult task. Guyu is revealing all of these things that all of the mighty figures present were aware of. However, countless mighty figures began to let loose cries of surprise, based on the fact that it represents the will of the heavenly Tao. Guyu continued, the ancient Tai Chu realm was destroyed by the infinite expansion of the heavenly Tao. The unconscious and unsupervised heavenly Tao was destined to fail. After a short while, Guyu spoke with a grave expression. The words on Tian Qinji's shell speak of a secret that could shake the entire continent. After deciphering the secret, both of them were extremely astonished. They really weren't from the same world. Idiots. Shut up if you're blind. This is already the 9 Revolution star script. The threshold set up by the former high priest made the secret even more secure. The two seniors didn't think too much about it and continued to pursue the power. They wanted to find the source of the power, which was most likely the cause of this entire incident. The two high priests, Tian Shinji and Shi Haizi, sacrificed their divine tool, the Dead Sea God Sealing Spear, and burned almost all of their life force to finally slay the ancient heavenly fiend celestial. This secret was not something that could be deciphered by normal cultivators. Even Tao integration stage super mighty figures wouldn't be able to decipher it. All of the mighty figures within the enchantment barrier didn't mind Enlin's rudeness. Instead, they listened to his advice to a certain extent. Wow, just what did the pangolin say? I don't understand. I don't understand. Only the high priest, who wields extremely powerful star power and calculative abilities, would be able to decipher this secret. Everyone nodded. Some of them had even experienced that battle, and their hearts would tremble at the mention of the ancient heavenly fiend celestial. Even a god with the ability to create worlds wouldn't be referred to as such by those two, right? Yu Feiyu was a little slower, but taking into account his strange fetish, there wasn't much of a disparity between the two of them. Did someone decipher it just now? Even if it's just a paragraph or a single word, that's fine. I really can't accept this. All of the mighty figures felt like there was no problem, and they all made vows. All of the return to void stage mighty figures discussed spiritedly among themselves. All of the mighty figures present were dumbstruck. All of the mighty figures listened with rapt attention. And Lin didn't hesitate any longer, and he tossed the photographic crystal into the sky. The special text on Tian Shinji's tortoiseshell was projected onto the beach. I think it says that if the Spirit Fish Clan and the Heavenly Turtle Tribe mate, a supremely talented prodigy will be born. Little Turtle Immortal, please agree to be with me. Gasp. Lan Xingyang and Yu Feiyu reluctantly agreed under High Priest Gu Yu's insistence. If the secret involved treasures and inheritances, then the Heavenly Turtle Tribe would have priority. This was the first time they had heard of a being referred to as a god by a Tao integration stage super mighty figure. He had already heard of Yu Feiyu's version. It was Gu Yu who did it. And that god is actually one of the heavenly Tao's self-regulating heavenly gods, the ocean. Everyone drew a sharp intake of breath as they stared at Gu Yu in astonishment. Some of them also turned to look at Enlin, upon which they were greeted by the sight of Enlin's astonished and perplexed expression. Cries of astonishment erupted once again upon hearing this. Say, what is the secret? Enlin, however, what he said after that sent shockwaves rippling through the entire enchantment barrier. The two of them were the main force in deciphering this secret. Those who should have been astonished were already astonished. This was actually all an act. He couldn't understand these words anyway, and they were all like scribbles. Chapter 1076. Everyone present was dumbstruck. The heavenly Tao, the consciousness of the world, the heavenly gods, self-regulation, the ocean, one concept after another was tossed out, and everyone was struck by the absurdity of the situation. The ancient heavenly fiend celestial possesses a special power that allows it to control all water-type spell techniques. That power was actually bestowed upon it by the heavenly Tao. The self-regulation of the heavenly Tao gives birth to a certain type of consciousness. As an extremely important heavenly god, not only does it control water, but it also controls weather such as wind and lightning. It can bestow its power upon the ancient heavenly fiend celestial, but can also bestow its power upon us. Many mighty figures were already breathing heavily at this point. The temptation to receive the power bestowed upon them by the heavens was simply too great. This was a truly paramount power. Senior Tian Shinji and Shi Haizi referred to the heavenly sea god as the heavenly sea god, as it was a true heavenly Tao divine spirit. Even though this heavenly sea god is a part of the heavenly Tao, its power of the heavenly Tao is far too powerful. If it's not careful, it could cause chaos and collapse in the world, which is why it was unable to enter the Tai-Chu continent. In other words, in order to maintain the stability of this world, it refrained from personally descending into this world. At a certain point in time, it suddenly determined that the human race was the cause of instability in this world. So it created an ancient heavenly fiend celestial to enter the Tai Chu continent in an attempt to destroy the human race. Who would have thought that the living beings created by it would be extremely weak after entering the Tai Chu continent, and they would be killed before they even made it out of the West Sea? That's right, this world represses the power of the heavenly Tao. It feels like it's fighting against itself. It's very contradictory, but it's a form of consciousness that exists to maintain stability. Hence, when the heavenly sea god saw the two high priests, it had an idea. If it bestowed a power of the heavenly Tao upon a living being that originally existed in this world, would it be able to break free from this repression? And Lin and Lan Xiaoni looked at each other silently. If they were not mistaken, the power that Lan Xiaoni had obtained was the power of the heavenly Tao of the water element. It really did sound quite scary. Furthermore, it was quite clear that Lan Xiaoni's power hadn't weakened in the slightest, and she was still alive and kicking. The heavenly sea god promised to bestow upon them the power of the heavenly Tao in exchange for helping him conquer the West Sea and destroy the human race. However, not every living being had the opportunity to possess the power of the heavenly Tao. Only living beings below the return to void stage have the right to obtain the heavenly sea god's power. All of the spirit fish clan mighty figures looked at one another before turning toward Lan Xiaoni. Lan Xingyang couldn't help but ask, "Little and I, you seem to have an innate chaotic water spiritual root, right? Then, did you see the heavenly sea god?" Lan Xiaoni shook her head with a confused expression. "No, the two high priestesses didn't mention this to me. Perhaps I'm not fated to be with them?" Lan Xingyang nodded skeptically and didn't pursue the matter. On the surface, the two high priests agreed to the heavenly sea god's conditions to find suitable living beings to carry out this mission. The power of the heavenly Tao was simply too alluring. As long as a living being possessed the power of the heavenly Tao, the two tribes would definitely rise to new heights. They spent the last of their lives constructing the tomb and performed a final divination to predict the fate of the two tribes before handing out the keys and awaiting the arrival of that day. The two high priests could only vaguely sense when the day of the secret would be revealed. During this long period of time, a few prodigies with innate chaotic water spiritual roots had appeared, but none of them were the catalyst for this event. It wasn't until the Purple Star incident that the heavenly sea god's words were confirmed. Only then did the two high priests finally decide to reveal the secret to the public. This was the true catalyst for them to draw upon the stars in the sky to bless the first living being with an innate chaotic water spiritual root after the destruction of the Purple Star. They would then wait for that living being to reach the soul formation pinnacle stage before entering the tomb to receive the inheritance. As for how they were going to conquer the West Sea and destroy the human race, they said the bearer of the power of the heavenly Tao would find out. All of the mighty figures turned to look at Lan Xiaoni in unison as Guyu spoke. Lan Xiaoni shuddered, and she stumbled back a couple of steps with a confused expression. "Why are you all looking at me again? I already told you, I'm not the fated one, and I didn't receive the power of the heavenly Tao." A doting smile appeared on Yu Feiyu's face. "Princess, you're the only living being with an innate chaotic water spiritual root after the destruction of the Purple Star. What a coincidence, right? No new keys have been issued to the tomb, which means that the mission of the two high priests has come to an end." Lan Xiaowang chimed in. "Big sister, this is so bad *SS. You're the woman who's going to become the sea monarch. What's there to hide?" As for Lan Xiaoni's father, Lan Xingyang, he was grinning from ear to ear. All of the spirit fish clan mighty figures were already rejoicing with joy. "Sigh, who would have thought that I would have to experience something so heart-wrenching at such an old age?" Guyu sighed with resignation. He felt like he could already envision Lan Xiaoni stomping on his back and forcing him to surrender to her. All of the heavenly turtle tribe mighty figures wore dejected expressions on their faces, and some of them were even looking at Lan Xiaoni with enmity in their eyes. Lan Xiaoni was still trying to explain herself in a loud voice. But all of the mighty figures thought that she was just too scared to say anything. That's right. No matter how much Lan Xiaoni tried to deny this, no one would believe her. She couldn't help but turn to Enlin for help. At this moment, most of the mighty figures turned to look at Enlin. Some of them wore contemplative expressions. Some of them had a hint of danger in their eyes. Some of them were deep in thought, and there were even some who were looking at him with anticipation. Enlin was the only human here. It was quite clear that he was a traitor among them. They had revealed their secrets and were plotting to destroy the human race, but another human was listening intently from the sidelines. What the hell was going on? In any case, this didn't seem right at all. Enlin's face convulsed slightly. What was it like to be stared at by 5 Dao integration stage super mighty figures, including Guyu, Yu Feiyu, and Lan Xingyang at the same time? Things seemed to have spiraled out of his control. I suddenly remember that this little friend here is a human. He's the sect leader of the 4-9 Immortal sect. And Lin, I know him. He's heard all of our secrets. We can't let him live. And Lin is extremely powerful, and he has a powerful backer who has close ties with the Celestial Court. It's not a good idea for us to just kill him like this, is it? Don't forget that we have a mission to execute the heavens and destroy the entire human race. The Celestial Court has to be destroyed as well. So what are you scared of? All of the mighty figures discussed spiritedly among themselves. And Lin was drenched in cold sweat. Chapter 1077. And Lin was in a state of panic. He was like a little lamb that had stumbled into a wolf's den. How could he get out of this predicament? The J-Bone Immortal Bug and Tina both entered battle mode. A faint, refreshing aroma wafted toward them. A blue figure suddenly appeared and positioned itself in front of Enlin. No one dares to touch Big Boss Enlin. Otherwise, don't blame me for being merciless. Lan Xiaoni summoned her white ball and raised her brows as she yelled at all of the mighty figures. A Spirit Fish Clan mighty figure chuckled lightly upon seeing this. Don't mess around, princess. How are you going to be merciless to us? Any one of us can subdue you easily. Only then did Lan Xiaoni realize that she seemed to be the weakest among this group of living beings. She was very scared, but a determined expression appeared on her face as she suddenly materialized an ice blade and placed it against her own neck. If you dare to touch Big Boss Enlin, I'll kill myself in front of you. Boom! Her words were like a clap of thunder that stunned all of the living beings present. All of the humans stared at Lan Xiaoni with astonishment on their faces. Even Enlin was a little dazed. Even though Lan Xiaoni couldn't defeat them, what if she chose to commit suicide? Who could stop her? Forcing a person who was likely to become the future overlord of the ocean and revitalize the two races to commit suicide was something they absolutely didn't want to see. Xiaoni, have you gone insane? Put down your weapon. Lan Xingyang couldn't help but let loose an enraged roar upon seeing this. Lan Xiaoni placed the ice blade against her neck with a cold expression. Big Boss Enlin saved my life. Without him, I wouldn't even have a chance to escape from that tomb, so I'm returning the favor now. All the Grand Cultivators were stunned by the resolute figure. They didn't dare to get any closer. Lan Xiaoni was clearly serious, and they couldn't afford to take that gamble. My God, is that my cowardly big sister? Could she have been possessed? Lan Xiaohuang exclaimed with incredulity as she stared at the cold mermaid. My little sister is stubborn. You can't persuade her. The handsome man smiled bitterly and shook his head. Never did Lan Xiaoni think that there would come a day when she would have to stand against all of the mighty figures of the West Sea and threaten them. It was also at this moment that a pair of warm hands tightly grasped her little hand that was tightly gripping the ice blade. Put down your weapons. How could he let his underling use his life to block in front of him when something happened? Your little brother's criticism is to shout 666, understand? A familiar voice sounded. Lan Xiaoni turned to the side with a conflicted expression. But if I put down my weapon, Big Boss Enlin, and Lin's tone was calm. Listen to me. Lan Xiaoni pursed her lips and silently lowered her weapon. Seeing this, all the supreme beings heaved a sigh of relief. However, Lan Xingyang's eyelids twitched slightly. He was a little angry that his daughter was so obedient to that man. However, Guyu silently crawled over at this moment and positioned himself protectively around Enlin. Fellow cultivators, no matter what, Enlin has done our two tribes a great favor. Even if conflict is inevitable in the future, we shouldn't kill him now. All of the supreme beings let loose cries of surprise upon hearing this. They didn't think that the high priest of the heavenly turtle tribe would step in to protect Enlin. Guyu's words carried a lot of weight, and even the other four Dao integration stage super mighty figures had to consider it carefully. At this moment, a light sigh suddenly sounded. Sigh, underling Lan, it looks like we can't keep that secret any longer. Lan Xiaoni turned toward the man beside her with a hint of surprise on her face, and a resigned sigh appeared on her face as if she knew what he was thinking. Seeing as that's the case, Big Boss, are you going to announce the truth? The truth? All of the Spirit Fish Clan and Heavenly Turtle Tribe mighty figures turned toward Enlin. Could it be that there was more to this than meets the eye? Enlin's white robe danced around him, and a sharp light flashed through his eyes as an invisible aura slowly gathered around him, making all of the mighty figures' hearts clench. He pulled out a lavish golden crown from his storage ring. Regal crown. This was refined from the essential blood and spine of a divine dragon, extracted by Dragon Tribe mighty figure Xiao Tuesday. It can unleash boundless dragon might, and is a must-have for flexing. Enlin placed the regal crown on his head, and his eyes suddenly turned a pure golden color as a paramount divine might erupted from his body. Divine might technique. His divine sense was comparable to that of a top-rate return to Void Stage mighty figure, and the combination of the regal crown and the divine might technique made all of the mighty figures feel an extremely terrifying aura emanating from Enlin's body. It was as if they were facing a paramount god in the heavens. Gasp! This power! What a terrifying aura! He's a soul formation stage cultivator. For some reason, all of the mighty figures within the enchantment barrier had their auras suppressed by Enlin. Enlin raised his head and looked directly at all of the mighty figures before him as his voice was imbued with boundless divine might. That's right. I'll tell you the truth right now. Underling Lan has indeed received the power of the heavenly sea god, the power of water. That's right. I do possess the power of the heavenly sea god. Lan Xiaoni finally nodded and admitted to Enlin's act. Her words created another massive stir among all of the mighty figures present. Even though many of the mighty figures had already guessed this, the fact that she had admitted to it in person created an even greater stir. Some of the Spirit Fish Clan mighty figures even had tears flowing down their faces. This is the greatest fortune of our tribe. Our Spirit Fish Clan is finally going to rise again. The Heavenly Turtle Tribe mighty figures were both elated and concerned. There were also many mighty figures who turned toward Enlin with confusion in their eyes. Lan Xiaoni receiving the power of the Heavenly Sea was indeed an unprecedented event. But why was Enlin so cocky? The corners of the Supreme Being's mouths twitched involuntarily when they saw him acting like he was the most powerful being in the entire world. They all understood this logic. But what was Enlin trying to do? What did this have to do with him? A faint smile appeared on Enlin's face, as if he had sensed the confusion in all of the mighty figures' eyes. Lan Xiaoni is the ruler of the heavenly sea god. So do you know who I am? Enlin's powerful question had all of the mighty figures dumbstruck. Who was Enlin? Aside from being the war god of the celestial court and the sect leader of the 4-9 immortal sect, he didn't seem to have any other identities. Do you really not know what my other title is? A divine might appeared in Enlin's eyes, and he splayed open his hands as countless bolts of lightning crackled and crackled between his palms. Golden bolts of lightning tore through space, exuding dazzling light. Most of the mighty figures present came to a realization upon seeing this. This was a title that could shake the entire continent. A smile appeared on Enlin's face. That's right. I am the master of all lightning in this world. Tamer of divine lightning. Lan Xiaowang interjected with excitement. All of the mighty figures, and Lin, everyone suddenly fell silent. Enlin braced himself and continued in a thunderous voice, I'm the heaven's chosen one who can control all of the lightning in this world. I am the wielder of the heavenly lightning god. Boom! Enlin's words were like a bolt of divine lightning that struck all of the mighty figures present, leaving them completely rooted to the spot. Chapter 1078. Super Heavenly Lightning God? Lan Xingyang was dumbstruck. The wielder of the heavenly lightning god. Guyu stared at Enlin with astonishment etched on its face. Enlin's words were far too earth-shattering, and all of the mighty figures present were stunned once again. Many of them had yet to come to their senses. Waves of shock surged through Lan Xiaonie's heart. She didn't think that Enlin would dare to go so far. The mermaid princess could only try her best to maintain her composure in order to prevent herself from being exposed. Enlin clasped his hands behind his back with a faint smile. That's right, that's me. Nonsense. How could you be the wielder of the heavenly lightning god? Some of the Spirit Fish clan mighty figures refused to believe this and roared in denial. No, he really is a possibility. Yu Feiyu, the most revered member of the Spirit Fish clan, suddenly spoke up to slap her subordinates in the face. Haven't you heard of Enlin's other title? He's the Lord of Transcendence. All of the mighty figures present were no idiots. Almost all of them fell silent upon hearing this, and they fell into deep thought as they stared at Enlin with astonishment in their eyes. Guyu shook its head. I was wondering how there could be a power that transcends the laws of this world that can control divine lightning. So it's just the heavenly Tao playing with itself. Now, that makes sense. Many of the mighty figures also came to a realization. That's right, the most astonishing person in this world with lightning wasn't the Western Celestial Court's heavenly emperor of supreme polarity. Instead, it was Enlin standing before them, the Lord of Transcendence who could control divine lightning. No, that alone doesn't necessarily prove your identity. It could just be that your constitution or cultivation method is special. Lan Xingyang quickly repressed the astonishment in his heart, but he still raised a question. Enlin seemed to have anticipated that there would be questions, and his expression didn't change in the slightest. Underling Land's power allows me to control all water-type spell techniques, while my power allows me to control all lightning-type spell techniques. This can't be faked, including divine lightning. Similarly, a mere Tao integration stage lightning-type spell technique. Lan Xingyang's eyes narrowed slightly. Oh, what do you mean? Enlin looked at all of the mighty figures present, and a proud expression appeared on his face as he spread open his arms. I'm not targeting anyone. All I want to say is that all of the lightning-type spell techniques used by all of you are trash in my eyes. Asterisk hiss, asterisk, all of the mighty figures' eyes widened as they stared at Enlin in shock. Even Tina and the Jade Bone Immortal Bug were beginning to lose their cool. The Jade Bone Immortal Bug transmitted her voice to Xiaona. Big Sister Xiaona, isn't Master flexing a little too much? He's drawing everyone's aggro. Tina transmitted her voice with uncertainty. Probably not a problem. I've already secretly prepared a spatial divine technique. If we really are in mortal danger, I'll take you with me even if I have to die. And Lin didn't pay attention to everyone's expressions, and his mood became even more indifferent and arrogant. If any of you are unconvinced, feel free to strike me with lightning. If I don't kill Lei Ri, consider my loss. All the mighty ones were shocked. What a frightening aura. Was this the demeanor of the heavenly lightning god, the super heavenly lightning god? It had to be said that Lin's confidence and pride had won the hearts of many of the mighty figures present. Of course, there were also some who were unconvinced and wanted to give it a try. All right. Lan Xingyang stood up first with battle intent surging from his body. If that's the case, then allow me to experience your power. The fact that a Tao integration stage super mighty figure was going to participate in this battle instantly put an end to all of the other mighty figures present. A Tao integration stage lightning technique should be able to instantly reduce a return to void stage mighty figure to dust, right? Lan Xingyang was definitely the best candidate to verify this. Big Boss Enlin. Lan Xiaonie turned to Enlin with a concerned expression. And Lin offered a comforting smile. Don't worry, I won't do anything that I'm not confident in. Stand back in case you're caught up in the shockwaves. Soon, a vast expanse of empty space was cleared out with Lin at the center. Be careful, Mr. Lin. I might have gone a bit too far, so don't blame me if you die. Lan Xingyang made a hand seal as he spoke in a slow voice. Vital energy instantly surged for several dozen kilometers as gale-force winds swept through the air. Blue lightning imbued with an extremely terrifying power of the divine Tao surged through the air. All of the mighty figures retreated even further away from Lin upon seeing this. They knew that Lan Xingyang wasn't joking when he said that he was going to use his power of the divine Tao. Soon, the lightning converged to form a blue whale, and each and every one of its tails caused the space around it to crack open and collapse. All of the return to void stage mighty figures present were feeling extremely fearful. It was quite clear that this blue whale could even kill a return to void final stage mighty figure. The blue whale's body curved before abruptly springing forward at a speed so fast that it was impossible to follow with the naked eye as it crashed toward Lin with terrifying might. Tina, the jade bone immortal bug, and Lan Xiaoni all had their hearts in their throats as they stared intently at the dazzling blue whale lightning technique. However, Lin only extended a single finger. Gotcha! It was as if time and space had stopped. The blue whale suddenly stopped in midair. Only the lightning that lit up the entire night sky and the spatial rifts in its wake were a testament to the fearsome power of the blue whale's attack. Lin pointed at Lan Xingyang with his index finger. F***CK off. A cold voice sounded. The blue whale suddenly changed directions before crashing toward Lan Xingyang with even more terrifying power. Lan Xingyang's expression shifted drastically, and his power of the divine Tao transformed into a massive palm that swept toward the lightning blue whale. Boom! An earth-shattering boom erupted. Lightning exploded, and destructive power pulverized everything around it. Some of the nearby mighty figures didn't even have time to react and were knocked flying by the terrifying shockwaves. When the lightning dissipated, Lan Xingyang was still standing on the spot, but his outstretched hands were showing signs of being charred black. All of the mighty figures were dumbstruck as they stared at the scenes unfolding before their eyes. And Lin, wounded Lan Xingyang? He really wasn't lying when he said that he could control all lightning techniques. Then he really is. Many of the Spirit Fish clan and Heavenly Turtle tribe mighty figures turned toward the white-robed man with reverence in their eyes. Lan Xingyang took a deep breath. Not only can you control my lightning techniques, but you can also make the power of my lightning techniques even more terrifying. Even Tao integration stage, super mighty figures may not be able to do something like this, but you're only a soul formation stage cultivator, yet you're able to do it. His expression changed as he looked at Lin, and he extended a courteous salute. Super heavenly lightning god, please forgive me for my previous offense. After connecting the dots, most of the mighty figures were convinced that Lin was the one who wielded the power of the heavenly lightning god. As soon as Lan Xingyang finished speaking, the crowd no longer dared to question him. The man standing before them was none other than the one who wielded the power of the heavenly lightning god. There was no doubt about it. Chapter 1079. After confirming Lin's identity, all of the mighty figures looked at Lin in a completely different light. However, Lin was not smug in the slightest. Instead, he adopted a high and mighty stance as he surveyed the mighty figures around him with an indifferent expression. Seeing as I've already proven my identity, it's time for me to tell you some things. Lin interlaced his fingers with a profound expression. Lan Xiaoni was astonished. Big Boss was still coming? Was this going to be a long show? All of the mighty figures' hearts skipped a beat. No one viewed him as just an ordinary junior with a supremely talented aptitude anymore. On the contrary, everyone viewed him as a mighty figure who wielded the paramount power of the heavenly Tao. Lin had already gotten into character, and he stood there firmly. He paused momentarily, and no one dared to say anything. And Lin gathered his emotions for a moment before continuing. Do you know why Lan Xiaoni is willing to call me Big Boss? The fact that I protected her is one of the reasons. But after obtaining the power of the heavenly Tao, her status has become extremely lofty and transcendent. So why is she still willing to call me Big Boss? Lan Xiaoni snuck a glance at Lin, as if she was a little displeased. She was clearly calling him Big Boss out of her own free will. That was what she thought, but no one else thought the same. All of the mighty figure's curiosity was piqued, and a heavenly turtle tribe mighty figure couldn't help but ask, Heavenly Lightning God, why is that? Because a faint smile appeared on Lin's face. My power of the heavenly Tao is of a higher level than Lan Xiaoni's. All of the mighty figure's eyes widened upon hearing this. And Lin continued in a calm and collected manner. Lan Xiaoni inherited the power of the ancient heavenly fiend celestial. Think back. How is the power of the ancient heavenly fiend celestial different from mine? Everyone fell silent again. A thoughtful expression appeared on Yu Feiyu's face after a short while. The power of the ancient heavenly fiend celestial can control all water-type spell techniques, but in Heavenly Lightning God, not only can you control lightning-type spell techniques, but you can also enhance the power of these spell techniques, and Lin smiled. Smart. Taking the enemy's lightning for your own use is only a basic power of the heavenly Tao. However, being able to enhance the power of your own lightning is an even higher power of the heavenly Tao. Why? This is because I am in existence on the same level as the heavenly sea god. I am the will of the heavenly Tao, and I wield paramount power. As soon as these words were spoken, the crowd was in an uproar. All of the mighty figures stared at Lin in disbelief. Tina and the Jade-Bone Immortal Bug were also astonished. It's over, it's over. Master is really going crazy. Giant Lin sure has guts. At this moment, a rational mighty figure retorted, Don't joke with us, super heavenly lightning god. It was clearly stated in the secret that the true heavenly gods of the heavenly Tao are unable to enter the Tai Chu continent. And Lin chuckled and waved a hand through the air. Don't forget that the heavenly sea god is the only one who can't enter that place. I'm different. Gasp. The useless heavenly sea god? Some of the supreme beings felt their hearts tremble and their ears buzzed. Lan Xiaoni's lips twitched involuntarily. And Lin continued in an indifferent voice. Why can I enter the Tai Chu continent? This is a journey of the heavenly Tao to become immortal. After sealing the heavenly Tao, one can fuse with the ordinary life forms of this world before slowly developing this power. This is quite similar to the heavenly sea god's ability to use the living beings of this continent to carry out his mission. Guyu exclaimed, What a beautiful imagination, Senior Guyu. And Lin heaved a sigh of praise in his heart before continuing. All of you who have read up on me will discover what's so special about me. Aside from me, have any of you ever seen a Tao body stage cultivator slay a mighty figure at the Return of Void pinnacle stage? Have any of you ever seen a cultivator reach the soul formation pinnacle stage after just a few years of cultivation? Have any of you ever seen a soul formation stage cultivator as bad *SS as me? None of the mighty figures were able to answer these three questions. There really was no one on the entire continent who was as bad *SS as him. Some of the Return to Void stage mighty figures were already trembling as they stared at Lin with awe and veneration on their faces. A smile appeared on Lin's face. I'm so bad *SS not because of how supremely talented I am, but because I'm a part of the heavenly Tao. All of the mighty figures were scared *class. They had thought that Lin was like Lan Xiaoni, who had been chosen by the heavenly Tao to complete some kind of mission. Never would they have thought that Lin was the heavenly Tao itself. However, Lin suddenly changed the subject. You don't have to be too nervous. I've already transformed into immortal, so I've been tainted by the aura of immortal. Aside from being a little bad *SS, I'm actually the same as all of you. Just treat me like a normal living being. Some of the mighty figures trembled in fear. Treat a heavenly Tao being like a normal living being, doing such an outrageous thing. This concubine really can't do it. Furthermore, do you think it was just a coincidence that I entered the fallen god's seabed tomb? Aren't you curious as to why I would somehow become involved in the tomb of the high priest and the high priestess? This is a secret regarding the fate of the two tribes. That doesn't make any sense. You might think that this series of coincidences is the will of the heavens, that this is fate destined by the heavens. Actually, this is not wrong, because all of this is my own arrangement. My will is the will of the heavens. Gasp. All of the mighty figures drew another sharp intake of breath. I'm actually going to the tomb to find my old friend, the heavenly sea god. I'm going there to tell it in person to stop its **T plan. My ultimate goal is actually the same as its. We both want to maintain the stability of this world and avoid the tragedy of the ancient Tai Chu realm from happening again. If the mission of the heavenly sea god of water is to rule over the West Sea and destroy the human race, then what is the mission of the heavenly sea god of lightning? As the possessor of the heavenly lightning god of water, my mission is to rule over the West Sea and destroy the human race. A smile appeared on Enlin's face as he looked at all the mighty figures who were listening respectfully to him. My mission is to revive the human race and ensure the stability of this world. A smile appeared on Enlin's face as he looked at all of the mighty figures. My mission is to revive the human race and ensure the stability of this world. Lan Xingyang, Guyu, Yu Fei Yu, and all of the mighty figures stared blankly at him. Everyone present could hear a pin drop. However, Enlin's aura was extremely calm. The human race made a mistake and stabbed a hole in the sky. However, the human race is like a dagger. If I use it in the wrong place, it will hurt me. But if I use it in the right place, it will become my most powerful weapon. That's right. I choose to forgive the human race. I can sense that if I carry out my mission to destroy the human race, an unimaginable calamity will erupt in this world. However, if I choose to revive the human race, the Tai Chu continent will usher in a new era of glory. And Lin looked at all of the dumbstruck mighty figures before continuing. The heavenly sea god has already agreed to my plan. The heavenly sea god has already agreed to my plan. He has bestowed upon Lan Xiaoni the power to rule over the West Sea and assist me with all his might. This is the real deal. Hence, Lan Xiaoni is my underling Lan. And Lin turned to Lan Xiaoni with a loving expression. That's right, Big Boss and Lin. You're absolutely right. Lan Xiaoni was astonished. She was truly shocked. This was too overbearing and ridiculous. A faint smile appeared on Enlin's face as he looked up at the starry night sky and made a slight embrace with his arms. My power has yet to fully recover, and the human race still has a long way to go. Are you all willing to fight for this world with me? When the time comes, all of you will be the greatest heroes of this world. The 5 Tao integration stage mighty figures were all dumbstruck. All of the return to void stage mighty figures shuddered. All of them realized that this could be the most important turning point in the history of their entire race. The power of the heavenly Tao. It was an invitation to them. Chapter 1080. After Enlin finished speaking, he extended a worldwide invitation to the Spirit Fish Clan and the Heavenly Turtle Tribe mighty figures. The man who was embracing the world was so proud, so dazzling, and so inviolable. Lan Xiaoni wanted to applaud upon seeing this. To be honest, she really didn't think that the situation would evolve from a bunch of mighty figures trying to kill Enlin to Enlin inviting them to join him in reviving the human race. Lan Xiaoni was quite familiar with Enlin's situation, and even she was wondering if Enlin really was the heavenly lightning god. After all, what he said was far too true. It was simply impeccable. Even Tina and the Jade Bone Immortal Bug were beginning to have similar suspicions. Now that I think about it, Giant Enlin really is very special. I've always felt that Master was extraordinary, but who would have thought that he would be this extraordinary? Crap, could he really be? Enlin's great deception technique had not only fooled his enemies, but he had also fooled his allies. Not only that, but he was also fooling himself as he spoke, and the more he spoke, the more he felt like he was the heavenly lightning god. For some reason, he was also starting to believe that he was the heavenly lightning god. The two high priests, Yu Feiyu and Guyu, were most adept at deducing certain information. All of them were astonished after conducting a comprehensive analysis of the information that Enlin had exposed. Yu Feiyu took a deep breath before speaking in a trembling voice. There's a 98% chance that Enlin possesses the power of the heavenly lightning god. He is a manifestation of the heavenly Tao, so there's a 99% chance that everything he has said is true. Guyu murmured, "My deductions are even higher than yours, 99% and 91%, respectively." The two Tao integration stage super mighty figures looked at each other before extending respectful salutes toward Enlin at almost the exact same time. Guyu pays his respects to the heavenly lightning god. Yu Feiyu pays her respects to the heavenly lightning god. Even the high priest had acknowledged Enlin's identity, so all of the other mighty figures immediately extended respectful bows toward the white-robed man. In such a situation, even a fool would know that it was better to believe that it was true than not. Moreover, the shocking facts were placed in front of them, and they had their own judgment. Tina and the jade bone immortal bug didn't. After all, they were Enlin's beast pets anyway. As Lan Xiaoni's underling, all she had to do was cheer him on, so she naturally didn't need to pay her respects. Just like that, all the mighty figures within the barrier respected Enlin as if he was the heavens, revering him endlessly. They all expressed their willingness to follow Enlin to revive the human race and protect the entire world. Enlin looked at the supreme beings who were worshipping him like a god and smiled. Others might think that his smile was benevolent and sacred, representing the recognition of the heavenly Tao. But this smile of his was actually a smile of victory. Damn it, I, your father, have finally overcome this calamity. It seemed like he had overperformed a little, but it wasn't a big problem. One more thing. I hope everyone can swear Tao heart vows to keep the fact that I'm a representative of the heavenly Tao a secret. I have yet to recover fully from the suppression I suffered due to my mortal transcension. During this period of time, just keep a low profile and listen to my instructions. Enlin's words were very reasonable, and all of the mighty figures immediately swore to keep this a secret. Thus, everything progressed very smoothly. The two tribes followed the heavenly Tao into battle, and the era of glory seemed to have arrived. The enchantment barrier slowly disappeared. On the beach, all of the mighty figures outside the enchantment barrier stared at the mighty figures within with curiosity and anticipation, as if they were trying to glean some information from their expressions. They were then greeted by the sight of all of the mighty figures, and they felt as if they had received a baptism and were filled with boundless anticipation toward the future. All of the mighty figures who hadn't heard the news were astonished. My God, what have these people been through? Why does it feel so weird? Mr. Enlin, are you going back to the kingdom of the 9 states? Do you want me to give you a ride? Guyu spoke with a buoyant smile, as if he had forgotten that he was the high and mighty high priest of the heavenly turtle tribe. All right, then I'll have to trouble you, Senior Guyu. A harmless smile appeared on Enlin's face. Why don't you leave tomorrow, Mr. Enlin? You brought the secret out of the tomb, so our Spirit Fish clan will naturally prepare a simple gift as thanks. Lan Xingyang spoke with a nonchalant expression. Enlin was ecstatic, and a hint of elation appeared on his face. Ha! You're far too kind, Senior Lan Xingyang. Holy F***. He had almost forgotten about this. Guyu cursed himself internally for being such a nuisance, but a benevolent smile appeared on his face again. Mr. Lan Xingyang is right. Our heavenly turtle tribe owes Mr. Enlin a debt of gratitude, so we should also prepare a gift for him. You're far too kind, Senior. Please don't prepare anything too expensive. Otherwise, I won't be able to accept such a gift. Enlin's expression was filled with righteousness, but his heart was bursting with joy. He had flexed and received a gift. This was so satisfying. All of the mighty figures outside the enchantment barrier were dumbstruck. Just what kind of secret had Enlin obtained? Why did it feel like the mighty figures of the two tribes were being so polite to Enlin? Tina, the jade bone immortal bug, and Lan Xiaoni didn't dare to say anything. They were afraid that Enlin's heavenly flying immortal acting skills would embarrass them again. Thus, Enlin stayed on the island for the night. The mighty figures of the two tribes went to pick out gifts for him. Guyu traveled through space and headed toward the moving heavenly star island, and it couldn't help but sigh with emotion. It had only divined that Enlin was going to be the key figure that would change the fate of the two tribes. How did he suddenly become the representative of the heavenly Tao that would lead the two tribes to glory? No, according to that theory, it wouldn't be an exaggeration to refer to him as some kind of consciousness of the heavenly Tao. He was a monarch, but Guyu had judged him to be a bronze monarch. This made Guyu doubt its own astrology skills again. Was he not suitable to be the high priestess? Should it resign and go home to raise pigs? Within the Sea Heart Palace of the West Sea, Lan Xingyang had already begun to pick out a gift. Within a boudoir, a graceful mermaid with a blue tail was diligently grooming herself in front of a white mirror shell. She had a light blue veil draped over her body, which was quite intricate, but a little short, revealing her slender, snowy white waist. Her long, inky black hair was coiled into a bun, which was held in place by a jade hairpin. She pursed her lips, which were as beautiful as a fruit. The mirage coral necklace and the red jade bracelet circled around her wrist for a long time before the final mirage coral necklace appeared on her wrist. The necklace was as white as snow, and the necklace was as red as fire, creating an intimidating sight to behold. Your Highness, you've been grooming yourself so diligently ever since you've returned. Who are you going to meet tomorrow? A beautiful mermaid asked with a curious expression. She had served the princess for a long time, but she had never seen the princess put so much effort into grooming herself. The mermaid princess looked at her beautiful features in the mirror shell and replied with a faint smile, I'm going to meet the most handsome man in the world tomorrow, of course. Chapter 1081. Enlin was meditating on the island in a leisurely manner. Some of the Spirit Fish Clan and Heavenly Turtle Tribe mighty figures had gone back to take care of business, while others continued to stand respectfully in the distance. They didn't dare to disturb Enlin, but they also wanted to personally see him off as a gesture of respect. The sky was just beginning to brighten, and waves crashed relentlessly against the reefs of the island. Tina and the Jade Bone Immortal Bug were both lying on Enlin's shoulder as they looked up at the horizon, where a sun that resembled an egg yolk was slowly appearing. Giant Enlin, you big swindler. How dare you swindle food and drinks out of me? Tina grumbled in a low voice. Enlin retorted with a serious expression. Who are you calling a swindler? I didn't want any presents at all. They offered to give me presents, and I didn't want to embarrass them, so I didn't refuse them. Tina rolled her eyes and harumphed before ignoring Enlin. Enlin finally managed to explain to his two beast pets that he really wasn't the heavenly Tao and that his survival instincts had forced him to fabricate a fake identity. The beast pets finally believed him, but they then began to point their fingers at him for swindling presents out of him. They were actually quite bored, so it was quite fun to criticize their shameless masters from time to time. As the sun rose over the horizon, a group of Spirit Fish Clan cultivators arrived. Lan Xingyang, Yu Fei Yu, and the other mighty figures had arrived. Enlin also saw a very familiar figure. What a beautiful mermaid! Even Tina couldn't help but exclaim. Enlin nodded in agreement. Underling Lan has fulfilled all of my fantasies about mermaids. Perfect. Lan Xiaoni spotted Enlin from afar. She had initially wanted to happily fly over to the reef, but after thinking about it, she realized that she had to show the other side of herself to Enlin. Her goal was to make sure that he would never forget her current appearance. She couldn't allow her image to be ruined. Hence, Lan Xiaoni repressed her urge. She slowly and gracefully made her way forward before landing beside Enlin like a celestial maiden. Her hair danced in the wind, and a fragrant scent wafted toward him. Big Boss Enlin, Lan Xiaoni greeted with a smile. She was the princess of the Spirit Fish Clan, so it was a little strange for her to refer to someone else as Big Boss. However, she couldn't care less anymore. She had already gotten used to it. Enlin had a look of admiration in his eyes as he praised, Little brother Lan, your beauty has reached a whole new level. A light blush appeared on Lan Xiaoni's face upon hearing this, and she replied in a seductive voice, I dressed up a little before I left. After all, I had to see you off. At this moment, Lan Xingyang also walked over with a hearty laugh. Little friend and Lin, I've kept you waiting. I've prepared a small gift for you to express my gratitude. With that said, he handed a storage ring to Enlin. Enlin nodded slightly and accepted it with a carefree expression. He didn't even take another look at it, as if money was like dirt to him. Lan Xingyang didn't mind. Instead, he issued a command for everyone to leave with a smile on his face. I'll be taking my leave now. You can have a chat with my daughter. In his eyes, this representative of the heavenly Tao definitely had a lot to say to his underling. Thus, everyone else left. Enlin and Lan Xiaoni sat on a rock and looked up at the rising sun. The warm rays of the sun fell upon Lan Xiaoni's body and intertwined with the beautiful butterfly carved into the shape of a luminous pearl on her forehead, exuding a faint golden light. She rested her chin in her hands, and her eyes reflected the rising sun. Big Boss Enlin, you said last night that you're going to revive the human race. Is that true? Enlin shook his head. It was just a casual remark. In order to prevent the destruction of the human race, I can only lead them in the opposite direction in order to avoid arousing suspicion. However, if anyone tries to invade the human race, I'll be sure to kill them. Even the heavenly sea god is no exception. Lan Xiaoni's eyes dimmed slightly. What if that person is me? And Lin faltered slightly upon hearing this. What are you talking about? You're my underling. Don't overthink things. I'm very scared. I'm scared that the power within my body will slowly transform me into a different person, or I'll suddenly go berserk and devour my mind. Tears welled up in Lan Xiaoni's eyes, and she pursed her lips. You know how terrifying that heavenly sea god is. Would it really give me a heavenly Tao power without any backup plans to force me to do something? Lan Xiaoni was not happy after obtaining the heavenly Tao power. On the contrary, the irresistible blue figure was constantly haunting her heart, striking her with fear and helplessness. Right at this moment, a warm hand landed on Lan Xiaoni's head before gently rubbing her head. If that day really comes and you lose yourself, I'll beat you awake, then kill the heavenly sea god. Don't forget, I'm your big boss, and I'll protect you. If anyone dares to bully you, I'll make them pay the most painful price. Lan Xiaoni turned to look at the extremely determined man beside her, and 2 streaks of tears had appeared on her face. However, a vibrant smile appeared on her face, and she was like a vibrant flower blooming under the morning sun. I believe in you, Big Boss Enlin. Then, Big Boss Enlin, I'll rule over the West Sea for now and become your most reliable shield. Gasp! What a domineering statement. Underling Lan, you've changed. This is all part of my self-cultivation. Don't forget, you have to come to the West Sea often to patrol, Big Boss Enlin. Don't worry, I'll come often, I promise. Then it's a promise. Let's pinky swear. No, let's hug. Thus, a warm and fragrant body fell into his arms. This was the first time Enlin had hugged Lan Xiaoni in a proper manner. The image of the 2 of them hugging on the rocks of a small island was very beautiful, and Tina, who was standing nearby, silently snapped a photographic crystal. This was not an act of her own volition. Instead, this was something that Shui Zhantian had asked her to do. She didn't know why, but it was fine to take a picture, right? Enlin and Lan Xiaoni chatted for a while longer. Lan Xiaoni's power of the heavenly Tao of water was indeed very strange. Its power was very real, but its mission was far too insubstantial. Could it be that whether or not she fulfilled her promise was entirely dependent on her character? Enlin didn't know what was going on, so he could only set this aside for now. Not long after that, a turtle head crashed through space and descended upon the island. Guyu also returned with a present. Sorry to keep you waiting, Mr. Enlin. I struggled for a long time before deciding on a present, but I couldn't think of what to give you. If only you were a normal cultivator, I could just give you some spirit stones. However, Mr. Enlin is clearly not such a vulgar person. Enlin opened his mouth, but he didn't know what to say. What he needed the most right now were spirit stones. I think that Mr. Lin is at a critical juncture in his recovery, so his safety is of the utmost importance. Hence, I used the divine rank material of our heavenly turtle tribe, the heavenly star dark shell, and injected my most powerful defensive spell technique into it. The heavenly star dark shell can be activated a total of 3 times, and each time, it can keep a Tao integration stage mighty figures attacks at bay for 10 minutes. Guyu spat out a palm-sized black turtle shell from its mouth as it spoke. This was undoubtedly the most powerful life-saving treasure for a soul formation stage cultivator. However, Lin's lips twitched upon seeing this. Is everyone in your heavenly turtle tribe like this? What? Guyu was perplexed. No, nothing. Thank you for your kindness, Senior Guyu. Lin accepted the black turtle shell with a smile on his face. There was no way he was going to tell him that Tian Qingji's inheritance was something similar to this, and Lin was most likely going to become the most powerful being in the world in terms of defensive prowess among all soul formation stage cultivators. Chapter 1082. And Lin knew just how valuable a life-saving treasure that could defend against attacks from Tao integration stage super mighty figures was. This was a truly lavish gift, and Guyu must have paid a heavy price for it. And Lin put away Guyu's heavenly star dark shell and officially embarked on his journey home. He stood on Guyu's turtle shell and waved farewell to all of the mighty figures on the island. Lan Xiaoni stood rooted to the spot for a long time, and the determination in her eyes became more and more determined. Go, Lan Xiaoni, you can do it. When Big Boss and Lin comes back, he'll see a better and more united West Sea. The Heavenly Turtle Tribe and the Spirit Fish Clan had agreed to form a temporary alliance due to Lin. The 2 tribes would form a West Sea alliance, which would conquer all of the sea monster tribes of the West Sea. At the same time, they would exterminate some of the evil sea tribes. The Spirit Fish Clan alone wouldn't be able to unify the West Sea. However, with the addition of the Heavenly Turtle Tribe, which had once stood aloof from worldly affairs, there was definitely hope for them to unify the West Sea. Within the spatial passageway, Lin sat on Guyu's back and pulled out a storage ring before silently refining it. Guyu's gift was a little unexpected, but it was quite valuable. Lan Xingyang's gift was most likely going to be quite good as well. He transferred his consciousness into the storage ring, and his heart rate immediately accelerated. There were vital stones. There were a whopping 1,020 vital stones. That was the equivalent of 12 million spirit stones. A wide smile instantly appeared on Lin's face. Lan Xingyang really knew how to be a smart person. Thus, his total net worth had reached 80 million spirit stones. He had been in the West Sea for close to a month, and with the money from Su Xiaolan's cooking, he had about 85 million spirit stones. He was very close to his target of 100 million. And Lin turned his attention to the other parts of the storage ring, where there were 2 items exuding powerful energy fluctuations. One of them was a ball with countless runes engraved upon it, and there was even a thoughtful annotation on its surface. Deep Sea Super Bomb. This is an energy core created from the compression of 2 high-density water veins that have been in the deep sea for over 100,000 years. It is then infused with Lan Xingyang's power of the divine Tao and can unleash a full-force attack comparable to that of a Tao integration stage super mighty figure. Note, this bomb is extremely powerful and is imbued with the terrifying power of the ocean. Only Tao integration stage mighty figures can use it from a safe distance of over 50 kilometers. Lin, a safe distance of more than 100 miles? Do you think I can throw a bomb that far? Lin was speechless. He silently turned his gaze in another direction. Lying quietly in the storage ring was a huge sword that was 1 meter wide and 3 meters long. This huge sword released the surging power of the ocean and was suffused with a bluish-white brilliance. There was also a note on it. Ancient Sea Immortal Sword, forged from stellar dark steel that fell in the Western Sea over 100 years. It is sharp and tough, and it can amplify lightning-type techniques. It has the power to split mountains and split seas. It is an intermediate-grade immortal artifact. An elated expression appeared on Enlin's face. Even though he didn't lack immortal swords, this immortal sword was clearly quite valuable. It could also amplify lightning-type techniques to a certain extent. This was most likely why Lan Xingyang had chosen to give it to Enlin. There were only 3 items in the storage ring: money, bomb, and weapon. Enlin sighed with emotion. I have to say, Lan Xingyang's gift is very much to my liking. Guyu shuddered upon hearing this. Super Heavenly Lightning God, do you not like this old turtle's gift? How about I give you a few more gifts? One had to realize that Enlin hadn't given the Heavenly Star Dark Shell back when he accepted it. No, Senior Guyu, you've misunderstood. I really like your gift as well. Enlin spoke in an urgent voice. As a swindler with a good heart, he only needed to swindle money once. After a period of hard work, Enlin finally managed to pacify the old turtle. Riding on a Dao integration stage, Super Mighty Figure Steed was extremely cool and convenient. Less than 2 hours later, they arrived at the Buddhist kingdom that led directly to the Kingdom of the 9 States. It had to be said that Guyu was a very important figure. Its arrival had even alerted Buddha Rulai of the Buddhist kingdom. Buddhist chants rang out as a golden Buddhist light enshrouded the entire sky. Shakyamuni, there's no need to be so welcoming. I'm just giving someone a gift, Guyu explained. It was also at this moment that Enlin suddenly felt as if he were being scrutinized by a certain gaze. There was no sense of tension or pressure. Instead, there was a sense of relaxation and excitement. Enlin's heart jolted with shock. Could this be Buddha Rulai's stare buff? Impressive. After that, the golden Buddhist light gradually disappeared, and the Buddhist kingdom super mighty figure seemed to have also left. Super Heavenly Lightning God, I'll be taking you here. If you need any help, contact me, and I'll do my best to help you, Guyu said in a slow voice. Thank you, Senior Guyu. Just call me Mr. Enlin from now on. Even if there's no one eavesdropping nearby, it's best to keep a low profile as much as possible, Enlin said. Guyu nodded with a smile. All right, Mr. Enlin, I'll be taking my leave now. Goodbye. Enlin bade farewell to Guyu. He and his 2 beast pets then teleported back to the Kingdom of the 9 States. Enlin's first stop was not Xioshin United University. Instead, he went to the 4-9 Immortal Sect. The Spirit Stone Mine incident, the Creation Realm, and the West Sea incident combined had taken him close to 2 months. He had already been playing truant for so long, so he didn't mind playing truant for a day or 2 more. Enlin chose to return to the 4-9 Immortal Sect first, as he had more important things to do. Within the Purple Star State, an Immortal Sect sat atop a vast expanse of green grasslands. Big Brotherin, you're back. Sect leader Enlin, Xiao Chou and his wife, Bai Yao, were already waiting outside the sect to welcome him. Haha, Xiao Chou, you look like you've lost weight. Bai Yao, have you adapted to life in the sect for the past month? Enlin greeted the 2 of them with a wide smile. Xiao Chou blushed upon hearing this. Bai Yao replied with a generous smile. The atmosphere in the sect is very pleasant to me. It's very good. She was telling the truth. It was very rare to see such a clean and pure sect. Living here was like living in a paradise, and she didn't have to think too much about anything else. I'm glad you've adapted. By the way, how's the Black Fox tribe doing? Enlin asked. The Black Fox tribe has been split between our White Fox tribe, the Green Fox tribe, and the Red Fox tribe. However, there's one thing that's a little difficult to deal with, and that's the revenge of the Spirit Fish clan. Bai Yao's expression became a lot more solemn at the mention of the Spirit Fish clan. After all, the Spirit Fish clan was a first-rate power on the Tai Chu continent. Even with the protection of the Hall of Creation's mighty figures, the White Fox tribe was still in a lot of danger. The Spirit Fish clan? A smile appeared on Enlin's face upon hearing this. You could tell your mother about this. She doesn't have to worry about me anymore, as I've already taken care of them in the West Sea. They know about my relationship with the White Fox tribe, so they won't attack you anymore. Xiao Chou and Bai Yao were both dumbstruck upon hearing this. Take care of the Spirit Fish clan? How? Xiao Chou's bulb-like eyes widened. The kind where the leader of the Spirit Fish clan treats me with utmost respect and Lan Xiaoni becomes my underling. and the entire clan develops in harmony. And Lin replied, Xiao Chou, Bai Yao. Chapter 1083. Lan Xiaoni? Did I hear that right? An incredulous expression appeared on Xiao Chou's face. Is that the Lan Xiaoni that we've met before? Bai Yao's eyes also widened, as if she had heard wrong. And Lin nodded. That's her. She's the princess of the Spirit Fish clan, Lan Xiaoni. She saved my life in the fallen god tomb, so she's under my protection. I don't really understand what's going on here. And Lin scratched his head. He heaved a forlorn sigh as he spoke. It's a long story, but it's true that she risked her life to save me. And I'm a person who always repays favors, so you don't mind, do you? And Lin was aware that Lan Xiaoni, Xiao Chou, and Bai Yao had quite a history with her. A wry smile appeared on Lin's face. Our past history was only because we were on different sides, and she and Chun tried to steal Bai Yao away from us. Now that Bai Yao and I have come to fruition, our anger has already dissipated. In contrast, I killed her fiancé and almost killed her. I hope she won't mind. And Lin nodded. Don't worry, she won't mind. She's a very obedient girl. And Lin, Bai Yao, and Lin was astonished. Big brother, and what happened between the two of you? Ahem. I told you she saved my life, but that's a long story. Let's talk about it some other time. And Lin felt like the conversation was going a little off topic, and he immediately changed the subject. But she's obedient to you, but that doesn't have anything to do with her being your savior, does it? Bai Yao turned to Lin with a confused expression as she forced the conversation back to the present. And Lin, Underling Lan is a very pure and innocent girl, and she's obsessed with looks. Even Shenan's looks almost made Lan Xiaoni fall for him. So someone as handsome as me would naturally fall for her. That's why she's so obedient to me. I see. And Lin was enlightened. Bai Yao opened her mouth to say something, but she didn't say anything in the end. The clown was actually a little face-blind when it came to human appearances. When Lin said that he was much more handsome than Shen, the clown might actually believe him. However, Bai Yao didn't want to ruin his reputation. After all, Lin was a man of honor. From the looks of it, Lin had one. This topic was going to be forcefully ended by Lin in such a shameless way. And Lin heaved a sigh of relief. Right at this moment, Tina jumped down from his shoulder and silently pulled out a photographic crystal. She could see the confusion and concern on Bai Yao's face, and an idea suddenly occurred to her, and she projected a beautiful image onto the ground. Don't worry, Bai Yao. Giant and Lin and Lan Xiaoni are very close friends, so the Spirit Fish clan definitely won't take revenge on the White Fox tribe. The scene on the ground was of a rising sun on the surface of the sea. Lin and the mermaid princess were bathed in the radiance as they embraced each other. The scene was meaningful and beautiful. Lin, the clown, Bai Yao, and Lin silently made his way over to Tina. Little Na, what are you doing? A dainty smile appeared on Tina's face. Bai Yao was still worried that you were just trying to comfort her, so I brought out this photographic image to prove that you really do have a good relationship with the Spirit Fish clan. What do you think? Clever, right? And Lin accepted the photographic crystal with a smile. Very clever indeed. You're the best, Lil Na. Tina was a little happy to receive praise from Lin. Bai Yao's heart surged with emotions. Their friendly relationship had indeed been verified. But why did she feel like she had discovered something even more extraordinary? Boom! The image recording crystal suddenly exploded and turned into dust. This crystal is so fragile. I accidentally broke it. A forlorn expression appeared on Lin's face. Sorry, Little Na. The clown, Bai Yao, the jade bone immortal bug. Was he trying to destroy the evidence? That had to be it. If he accidentally broke it, it would turn into dust? Even if he was putting on an act, couldn't he at least make it a little more realistic? Tina's eyes widened with an aggrieved expression. This photographic crystal is broken. How am I supposed to explain this to little Tion? Oh, little Tion was involved as well? And Lin's expression hardened. He only asked me to take some pictures of you interacting with other members of the opposite sex. That's quite a strange hobby. If it weren't for the fact that he begged me, I wouldn't have agreed to help. Tina seemed to be a little distressed. I I see. And Lin chuckled. She was an instigator. He actually knew what that meant. Little Na, you don't have to worry about little Tion. I'll go talk to him for you. And Lin chuckled. The clown swallowed. He could see killing intent in Lin's eyes. Bai Yao tugged on the clown's fur and transmitted her voice to him. Don't say anything stupid. We have to keep a low profile. Perhaps Lin and Lan Xiaoni are just friends? A thoughtful expression appeared on the clown's face. So Lan Xiaoni is a good friend who listens to everything Big Brother says? Bai Yao crap. Why did it seem like things were getting more and more exciting? And Lin paused for a moment before providing an explanation. Lan Xiaoni and I are just friends. I'm a big brother, and she's a little brother. The clown and Bai Yao nodded in unison. I trust you, big brotherin, the clown said with a serious expression. I also trust you, sect leader in Lin, Bai Yao said with a serious expression. Little Na can also prove this. Tina raised her hand, and Lin rolled his eyes. I don't need you to prove this. Thus, everyone returned to the main pavilion of the 4-9 Immortal Sect. By the way, where's Bai Ling? I need to talk to her about something, and Lin asked. Pavilion Lord Bai has been staying in the small Phoenix world for the past few days, the clown replied. Is she immersed in her research again? And Lin was a little speechless. What has she been up to recently? I feel like she's become a tech-obsessed nerd. A resigned smile appeared on the clown's face. We don't know about that. Pavilion Lord Bai only listens to you, big brotherin, so we don't have a chance to ask her what she's up to. Even if we did, we probably wouldn't be able to understand what she's saying. And Lin smiled upon hearing this. Do you think I can understand what she's saying just because you guys can't understand it? After spending so much time with Bai Ling, the theories and terms that popped out of her mouth from time to time left Lin dumbstruck. He felt like an uncivilized gorilla that had been dealt a heavy blow. By the way, big brotherin, why are you looking for Pavilion Lord Bai? The clown asked. I want her to repair my boat, and Lin replied. The clown was confused. Repair your boat? That's right. I want to repair a large boat. And Lin smiled. A large boat? And Lin, why are you repairing a large boat? How big is it? Bai Yao asked. And Lin drew an oval with his hand. About 50 kilometers in length. The clown, Bai Yao, the two of them were astonished again. That's right. The boat that Lin wanted Bai Ling to repair was the future strategic weapon of the 4-9 Immortal Sect, the Starfire battleship. Chapter 1084. Within the 4-9 Immortal Sect, Mystic Realm. Within the Phoenix Small World. Lin found Bai Ling, who was sitting in the villa atop the mountain. She sipped on some tea while performing calculations on a holographic projection. Oh, Pavilion Lord Bai, you sure live a good life. And Lin arrived atop his brick, and he couldn't help but smile at the sight of Bai Ling. Bai Ling shot a glance at Lin before taking another sip of tea. I'm working, she said in a lazy voice. Do you need something? And Lin discovered that extremely tiny particles of light were flashing incessantly in Bai Ling's eyes, which represented a vast amount of information and data. Bai Ling possessed near-invincible analytical and calculating abilities, so complex calculations were a piece of cake for her. She didn't need any large-scale equipment to assist her. As for experiments, she could simulate them in her mind. This meant that she was a massive laboratory, and she could work wherever she went. Of course I have something to do. I wouldn't come and disturb your work if I didn't have something to do. And Lin replied with a buoyant smile. What is it? Bai Ling withdrew her gaze from the projection of light before turning to Lin with a curious expression. Lin scratched his head. Air, I want you to repair my ship. Bai Ling, go find a shipwright. Don't bother me. She was extremely enraged. Did he really think she was a laborer who did everything? The problem is that this isn't an ordinary ship. It's a battleship. How about I release the battleship for you to see? And Lin released a blue ball of light, which hovered in midair. Bai Ling was initially quite annoyed, but her pupils contracted drastically at the sight of the ball of light. What a superb spatial manipulation technique. This spatial manipulation technique is flawless, and it's like a work of art. And Lin gave her thumbs up. You know your stuff. That was created by the heavenly sea god himself, so it was naturally flawless. Bai Ling's interest was piqued. How big is your battleship? I'll make some space for you first. And Lin thought to himself for a moment before replying. It's about 50 kilometers long, 15 kilometers wide, and over 40 kilometers tall. Bai Ling's lips twitched slightly. It's a little ridiculous. Are you trying to squeeze my small world to death? Where did you get such a big ship? I picked it up from the ancient tomb at the bottom of the sea. And Lin's expression was calm. Bai Ling rolled her eyes. Stop pretending. Your eyes betray your smugness. And Lin felt a little awkward. At this moment, Bai Ling had already waved a hand to catch the blue ball of light. She then opened her other hand, upon which two black and white orbs appeared. World Authority, activate. Rumble. The sky exploded and the earth trembled. Right in front of the giant mountain, countless plants and spirit beasts began to shift. Some of the mountains and rivers also began to shift and change. It was as if an invisible hand had pushed them away and flattened them. Not long after, a vast and spacious area appeared in the Phoenix small world. And Lin clicked his tongue in wonder when he saw this. This kind of power that can control the world in one's hands and change it according to one's will, I also want to try it. A faint smile appeared on her face. Do you want to play? I can transfer the authority over this world to you. And Lin was extremely excited. Really? Bai Ling nodded. Of course. However, the prerequisite is that you have to progress to the return to void final stage first. Without attaining the power of the divine Tao, you won't be able to control the small world. And Lin, how long will that take? For others, it might be very difficult to see that day come. Bai Ling looked deeply into Lin's eyes before speaking in a gentle yet firm voice. But for you, I believe that day won't be too far away. Lin was a little flattered. It looked like this big sister had a lot of faith in him. Bai Ling unleashed a spell technique to activate the blue spatial ball of light before tossing it toward the spacious area. All of a sudden, boundless light enshrouded the entire heaven and earth. Boom! The earth tremored violently as gale-force winds swept for over 50 kilometers. A gargantuan object suddenly appeared, obscuring heaven and earth with no end in sight. An inky black cannon barrel, dark green alloy armor, and the might of an ancient giant beast were all indicative of just how extraordinary this battleship was. So the battleship you were talking about really is this big? Bai Ling stared at the Starfire battleship with a slightly dazed expression. Wait, why do I feel like this battleship is a little familiar? Bai Ling's brows furrowed slightly. It's the Starfire battleship of the Spirit Fish clan, Lin explained. Bai Ling took a deep breath as she stared intently at Lin. The Starfire battleship. This is a battleship constructed from the combination of the Divine Tao and the most advanced technology. You even managed to obtain such a strategic weapon? It's now a strategic weapon of our 4-9 immortal sect. A confident smile appeared on Lin's face. Bai Ling couldn't help but take a few more glances at Lin. A weapon of the Starfire battleship's caliber was even more valuable than a divine tool. Lin's current power level wasn't actually all that powerful, but he had managed to obtain such an opportunity. Perhaps I really didn't choose the wrong person. A smile appeared on Bai Ling's face, and it was as if all the snow and ice had melted away. It was a delightful sight to behold. You asked me to repair this battleship. Looks like you have some foresight. Countless specks of light flashed through the woman's eyes as the air and the sky surged like clouds, gently caressing the massive battleship. The armored hull has been severely damaged. The propulsion control room has been destroyed, and the Divine Tao Crystal's intent enhancement space has been destroyed. This level of damage is extremely difficult to repair. There's probably no better repairman than me on this entire continent. Furthermore, with this purple star small world, I can use the power of this world to repair the battleship, so I'll be able to speed up the repair process significantly, Bai Ling said with a confident expression. She closed her eyes as she spoke and began to perform some calculations. And Lin also waited patiently beside her. Not long after that, Bai Ling opened her eyes with a smile. I've done the calculations. The total repair cost is about 100 million spirit stones. This is the list of resources that we need to purchase. Boom! 100 million spirit stones. This astronomical repair cost struck Enlin like a bolt of divine lightning, and it rang incessantly in his head. Enlin accepted the list with a blank expression and fell silent. Our sect only has 50 million spirit stones in circulation. What do we do with this money? He asked with difficulty. Bai Ling waved a hand in a domineering manner. I don't care what you do with this money. That's the sect leader's concern. Repair it if you want. Enlin felt a headache coming on. Give up? No. This Starfire battleship was even more valuable than a divine tool, so he definitely couldn't give it up. It was best to complete something as good as this as soon as possible. Enlin took a deep breath. All right, leave it to me. A gratified smile appeared on Bai Ling's face. This was the responsibility that a sect leader should bear. Only this kind of training would allow him to grow even faster, right? Come with me, Bai Ling. Let's gather our teammates and discuss how we're going to solve this problem. Enlin was full of fighting spirit. There's strength in numbers. Bai Ling, the gratification he felt just now instantly vanished. Chapter 1085. Within the 4-9 Immortal Sect Conference Chamber, Enlin, Tina, the Jade Bone Immortal Bug, as well as Xiao Zhe, Xiao Chou, Lu Qianhuan, Bryce, Bai Ling, and the White Scale Wolf God were all gathered here. Enlin recounted the events of the West Sea and described the power of the Starfire battleship in detail. Everyone let loose cries of surprise upon seeing the gargantuan Starfire battleship in the small world of the Phoenix. A battleship with no end in sight was simply too astonishing. With this Starfire battleship, our sect will have another Dao integration stage super mighty figure. Enlin interlaced his fingers as he spoke in a cold voice. Everyone let loose another cry of surprise, which was immediately followed by ecstasy. My God, Master is so mighty. Doesn't that mean our sect is going to be even more bad *SS than the 9 Imperials? The White Scale Wolf God spoke with a scorching light in his eyes. Enlin, you really are something else. You brought back an invincible battleship from a trip to the tomb. Lu Qianhuan's purple eyes lit up as she stared at the battleship with a hint of excitement in her eyes. Such a massive battleship. She really wanted to go and pilot it. That battleship seems to be a little damaged. Xiaozhe spoke slowly as he looked at the projection. Enlin replied with a smile. That's exactly what I wanted to tell everyone. This battleship has sustained quite a bit of damage, and the repair fees will be around 100 million spirit stones. Gasp! This astronomical repair fee instantly silenced the lively atmosphere in the conference chamber. However, everyone present had been through a lot, and they quickly calmed down. Money. This was a main problem they had to solve. 100 million spirit stones. Our sect only has 50 million spirit stones in circulation. Even if we use all of it, we're still short of 50 million spirit stones. Xiao Zhe's brows furrowed. Tina chimed in. There's a spirit stone mine in the Flying Ball Tribe's territory. If we overmine it, we can solve this problem. Enlin shook his head and immediately rejected this idea. If we overmine the mine, the spirit stone mine will collapse. When that time comes, the mine will really be finished. That mine is the economic lifeline of our sect. We can't make such a decision unless we're in a dire situation. Lu Qianhuan nodded in agreement with Enlin's words. She pondered for a moment, and her purple eyes suddenly lit up. I have a good idea. Everyone turned to look at Lu Qianhuan. A smile appeared on Lu Qianhuan's face as she turned toward Xiao Chou. Xiao Chou, your wedding with Bai Yao was held at your in-laws' place, and it was disrupted by the Black Fox tribe and the Spirit Fish clan. How about we hold a wedding at the 4-9 Immortal Sect as well? At the same time, we can also satisfy the regrets of the sects of the Kingdom of the 9 States that they didn't have time to offer their blessings. All the higher-ups in the conference room sucked in a breath of cold air. Enlin couldn't help but clap his hands. Wonderful. I almost forgot about it. Of course, this is a joyous occasion. Bryce shook his oily green head. I agree with this wedding. Xiaozi was also excited. I also agree to this marriage. I totally agree. +1. Bai Ling's face convulsed slightly. As expected, this sect couldn't think of a normal way to make money. What was she hoping for? All of the higher-ups turned to look at Xiao Chou. Xiao Cho slapped the table. I'm definitely holding this wedding. A burst of elated cheers erupted throughout the conference room. Everyone knew that there would be another wave of cash coming in soon. The plan to benefit the sect through the wedding was settled. Bai Ling hesitated momentarily before speaking, but we still have a funding gap of at least 50 million spirit stones. You won't be able to raise that many spirit stones for a wedding like this, right? You have to realize that we only raised just over 30 million spirit stones for our sect founding ceremony. Big Sister Bai, this is different. And Lin smiled and said, our sect status is actually very different from how it was in the past. Just my title as the Lord of Transcendence and our recent victory over the Dragon Court of the Eastern Seas have elevated the 4-9 Immortal Sect status to a whole new level. Aside from that, there are also the living beings of the West Sea. There will definitely be more powers that want to establish good relations with us than last time. Hence, I feel like the 4-9 Immortal Sect's second celebration is definitely going to receive a lot of congratulatory gifts. And Lin's words inspired many people in the conference room. If we really need money, I'll borrow some from the Dragon Court. And Lin said with a buoyant smile. Bai Ling, everyone, they felt sorry for the Dragon Court of the East Sea for a second. Thus, the matter was settled. Xiao Chao's wedding would be held at the 4-9 Immortal Sect in 25 days. This news was announced to the entire kingdom of the 9 states. And Lin even transmitted his voice to Lin Junjun, asking her to contact the Heavenly Court and spread this news throughout the entire Taichu continent. He was waiting for the situation to develop. And Lin, who had skipped 2 months of classes, returned to school. The candlelight flickered within his dorm room. And Lin, tell me the truth. What did you do in the West Sea? Su Xiaolan placed her hands on her slender waist and huffed with rage. She had heard some rumors that Enlin was on very good terms with the mermaid princess. Xiaolan, let me explain. Enlin spoke in a panicked voice. He began to recount his experiences in the West Sea, trying to be as honest as possible. The night was long, and so was the story. Su Xiaolan listened very intently, and her eyes glowed with a jade-like sheen as the faint candlelight shone on her snowy white skin. She would occasionally ask some important questions, and Enlin would answer all of them with honesty and sincerity. After recounting the story, Su Xiaolan fell into deep thought. You didn't do anything wrong, but I still don't understand why she risked her life to save you. Su Xiaolan pouted slightly. She's just a simple-minded girl. She risked her life to save Chan Nan, who she barely had any interaction with, let alone a good person like me. And Lin felt as if a heavy burden had been lifted from his shoulders upon seeing Xiaolan's expression. The poor Chun Nan had once again become Lin's protective talisman. A smile appeared on Su Xiaolan's face. That makes sense. She stroked her storage ring, and a small mountain of vital stones fell to the ground in a flash of light. Here, this is all the vital stones I've earned in the past month. There's a total of 610. And Lin's eyes lit up. Xiaolan is the best. I love you to death. Thus, his total net worth had exceeded 86 million. He happily put away the primeval stones, and the smile on his face could not be hidden no matter what. Su Xiaolan rolled her eyes at the sight of Lin's money grubber expression. You love spirit stones? Don't drag me into this. And Lin came to his senses and immediately grabbed onto Su Xiaolan's slender hand with a serious expression. Xiaolan, I've actually prepared a surprise for you. Chapter 1086. And Lin smiled. This is no ordinary turtle shell. It's called the Heavenly Star Dark Shell, and it's a present from Guyu. It can be activated 3 times in total, and each time it's activated, it can defend against a Dao integration stage Mighty Figure's attack for 10 minutes. As he strolled through the campus at night, he would always encounter a few students who had mustered up the courage to come up to him. Su Xiaolan struggled for a while, but she couldn't resist Lin's forcefulness in the end. And in the end, she gave in slap. And Lin was very angry, and he decided to find an opportunity to go to the Ziwei Imperial Pavilion in the Celestial Court and demand justice. Thus, Lin forced Xue Zhantian to sleep with him for another night. Nice use of antonyms, and Lin praised with elation. He was in an even better mood after the beating. And Lin was also looking forward to his wedding. What was worth mentioning was that senior student Tang Shimin finally progressed to the half-step soul formation stage on the eve of his graduation. He passed the 80th level of the Immortal Spirit Tower and was accepted into the University Hall of Fame after reaching the 80th level. And Lin, who had been skipping classes for a long time, appeared on the campus again. What surprise! His appearance was always able to attract countless gazes. Just as Su Xiaolan's imagination was running wild, Su Xiaolan's heart jolted and her eyes shimmered with tears. I feel the same way, so you can keep this turtle shell. I just want a simpler present. However, her flawless cheeks were flushed, and her heart rate was also accelerating for some reason. And Lin replied with an "oh" before ravaging Shui Zhantian again. This was a bit of a pity. Your beauty is already disregarded jewelry. A beautiful tortoise shell is just the icing on the cake, and an ugly tortoise shell is just a contrast to your beauty. In any case, it's all very beautiful. And Lin caressed Su Xiaolan's face and said softly, that's not up to you. Wait until you're stronger than me, and your defense is stronger than mine. Then you can say this to me. Now, you'd better listen to me." And Lin revealed a rare, domineering aura as he forcefully put on the heavenly astral dark armor for Su Xiaolan. She knew that there were many beautiful things in the West Ocean, such as pearl necklaces and coral rings. The colors and luster of these items were dreamy and beautiful, and it was very tempting to look at them. And Lin, with a thunderous sound, and Lin was sent flying hundreds of meters by Su Xiaolan. Su Xiaolan's eyes glazed over as she stared at the seductive Lin. The most bad *SS was Su Xiaolan. Due to the fact that she had reforged her Dao Foundation and absorbed the essential true blood of the vermilion bird, her cultivation base had progressed at a rapid rate, and she was already at the soul formation final stage when she participated in the trial. 1 minute later, after all, it was all about money. Su Xiaolan blushed as her hands were suddenly grabbed by Lin's, and she spoke in a gentle voice. "The next day, you're an emperor. Can't you be a little more magnanimous?" As the #1 star of the university, and Lin was the true sword immortal. "Wah, master, you're insane, unreasonable, and unreasonable." Shui Zhantian curled his round body into a ball as he complained about Lin's crimes. The undefeated war god Xing Tian had been tragically defeated by Lin and Su Xiaolan in quick succession. No one knew what he was feeling right now. Shameless. A blush appeared on Su Xiaolan's face. What if I defeat him? Xin Yuansheng and Su Qinyan had progressed to the soul formation stage, so they had also progressed past the 90th level. However, they were stopped at the 97th and 96th levels. Everyone was happy for Tang Shimin that salted fish had finally made a comeback. And Lin was extremely excited. "I'll reward you with a smack." However, that didn't matter. He had already passed the trial anyway, so there was no challenge in going there. He was just going to bash a bunch of seniors there. Su Xiaolan's mouth gaped open with incredulity etched on her face. That's right, he was planning to give this life-saving divine tool to Xiaolan. Xiaolan had told Lin that she was definitely going to fight Emperor Ziwei during the 5th year of university next year. Could you imagine the despair of having your classroom blocked off during recess? "This is for you." He then opened his system and looked at the god of war heaven-blasting cannon mission. Emperor Ziwei still occupied a spot on the list of missions to make 10 mighty figures of the return to Void Stage or above hate you with all their might. In any case, this promise was probably off the table. That guy owed him an inheritance, and he hadn't returned it yet? No, I can't accept this kind of treasure. What are you going to do if I accept it? Su Xiaolan pushed the tortoise shell toward Lin with an extremely firm expression. King pervert. Su Xiaolan, the inky black tortoise shell clung tightly to her snowy white skin like a pendant, and the combination of the two vibrant colors created a sense of beauty. When Lin was sent flying by Su Xiaolan's slap, he was thinking about Emperor Ziwei. She didn't think that Lin would lie to her about this, so she was telling the truth. Lin pulled out an inky black tortoise shell. Unfortunately, Xiaolan had only just defeated Xing Tian and received an inheritance of the Tao of Slaughter before fainting from exhaustion. She was unable to ascend to the 100th level as everyone was anticipating. With the help of the Celestial Court, the wedding's influence on the continent continued to grow. There were all sorts of seductive versions of love that broke all conventions, diamond love that transcended common sense, extraordinary love that could awaken one's Tao heart, and so on. This was especially true for some of the juniors of the lower grades. They worshipped this mysterious and powerful senior to the point of fanaticism. Legends of Enlin were circulating throughout the school. The days passed by peacefully. During this trial, she made it all the way to the 99th level and even defeated war god Xing Tian. Su Xiaolan couldn't help but burst into laughter. This is the first time I've seen a boyfriend give his girlfriend a tortoise shell, and he still has the cheek to praise it for being beautiful. Shui Zhantian. And Lin gave Xiaolan a thumbs up in encouragement. Go, Xiaolan. If you encounter Emperor Ziwei, beat him up and avenge me. You'll get a kiss for every punch you punch him, and you'll get 2 kisses for every punch you punch him. Gradually, this wedding was becoming a grand occasion even in the eyes of the entire continent. Wah! Master is kind, gentle, and persuasive. Shui Zhantian's body was red and swollen as tears streamed down his face. Due to his truancy, Enlin missed the Immortal Spirit Tower trial. Enlin made his way out of his dorm room, humming a little tune as he was in a very good mood. However, the 4th-year end-of-year exams arrived before the wedding. He returned to his dorm room and gave Shui Zhantian a merciless beating. It was just a beating, so why did he have to remember it for so long? Their lips touched in an extremely seductive manner. The 4-9 Immortal sect was counting on these gifts to survive. This was a serious job, and it couldn't be sloppy. He, Su Xiaolan, and the others had to travel to the dark marshlands again. Your surprise is to give me a tortoise shell? Su Xiaolan's flesh crawled as her fantasies were shattered. Oh no, this should be Enlin laid his head on Shui Zhantian's head and fell into a deep sleep. Life passed by very quickly, and it was already the end-of-year exams. Enlin spoke with a matter-of-fact expression. I don't want you to be hurt more than myself. The mailbox in the attic was full every day. It was filled with pink letters. Xiao Chao's wedding was imminent, and everyone from the 4-9 Immortal sect was busy preparing for the extravagant wedding. The most important thing was to invite as many mighty figures as possible. Chapter 1087. With Enlin's status, he could choose not to go to the end-of-term examinations. However, he didn't want to be treated differently, so he decided to go and protect his friends and classmates. The Dark Marshlands was not a place to play. Danger could erupt at any moment, and there were actually many students and teachers who had died on this battlefield. Even though the cruel battles could help students become more powerful quickly, Enlin still decided to go and try his best to help the students who were in danger. In the southwest region of the Kingdom of the 9 States, Gem State, on top of Lincoln City, a grand city, this was one of the cities where the Blood Tribe had fought the most ferociously. To the west was a vast expanse of black earth with a faint aura of death and corrosion lingering in the air. There were several thousand soldiers stationed on the city wall, which was over 100 meters tall. There were long-range attackers, scouts, cannons, melee guards. All types of powerful soldiers were present, forming an impenetrable fortress. The Flying Sword God was instructing Enlin with a serious expression on his face. Classmate Enlin, don't forget to be too arrogant. After all, Emperor Yi Ding is most likely already suspecting you of Leiden's death. Don't worry, I know that. I'll just be idling here and won't cause any trouble. Enlin nodded with a smile. The Flying Sword God heaved a resigned sigh upon seeing Enlin's expression. All right, you have to ensure your own safety. Your presence is very important to the Celestial Court. What else could Enlin say after receiving such special attention from his homeroom teacher? He could only agree obediently. The Flying Sword God didn't dare to cause any trouble with his classmates this time. Last time, he and his classmates had swept through a dozen or so Blood Tribe cities and accidentally allowed Enlin to kill a return to Void Stage mighty figure. Not only that, but they had also drawn out a top-rate mighty figure like Layden. That had scared the living daylights out of them. Right now, Emperor Dang was definitely still furious. Who the F***CK would dare to sweep through a blood tribe city? It was best for them to play it safe. The flying sword god left after instructing Enlin. Enlin stretched lazily before riding onto Bai's back to relieve his boredom. I wonder how Cassidy, Merlin, and Tobias are doing. They said they're going into seclusion, but they're not going to go into seclusion for 100 years, right? And Lin heaved a forlorn sigh as he looked at the dark marshlands in the distance. 4 returned to void stage mighty figures with extremely long lifespans. Going into seclusion for over 100 years was a very normal thing. He had even heard of those who had gone into seclusion for over 10,000 years. That won't happen, big brotherin. They really want your blood, so they won't be able to hold back for that long. Woof, Dabai said. Although he didn't want to admit it, Dabai's words really did make King sense. Big brother, and do you think the Blood Tribe Emperors would explode if the 3 Blood Tribe holy disciples suddenly betrayed the 4-9 immortal sect? Woof. Dabai's worries were always very special, but they were also quite realistic. I think so. And Lin thought for a moment before continuing with a smile. That's why the Starfire battleship has to be built as soon as possible. Only then can it provide a warm and safe harbor for my lovely servant. Dabai, big brotherin, I feel like you're becoming more and more like a big shot. Woof. Is that so? Perhaps it's because I flexed in front of a bunch of return to void stage and Dao integration stage mighty figures? And Lin speculated. Dabai, you're just being pretentious. Woof. And Lin felt a little helpless. Could it be that he had already lost the upper hand? A man and a dog walked around the top of the city wall. After circling around, they still didn't find anything unusual. Big brotherin, I'm so bored, woof. Dabai sighed, and Lin lay on Dabai's back and suddenly looked at the black continent in the distance. He waved his hand and the wind and clouds rolled. What is it, big brotherin? Woof. Dabai detected Lin's strange behavior. Nothing. And Lin continued to lie on Dabai's back with his eyes narrowed in a leisurely manner. Meanwhile, on a black mountain over 10 kilometers away from Lincoln City, the terrain here was extremely rugged, and there were huge boulders everywhere. Master Dulu, the defensive map of Lincoln City is here. I've drawn up the terrain as well as the distribution of forces on the city wall. A thin man with gray hair and a pair of bloodthirsty eyes chuckled. He respectfully handed over a piece of yellow paper to the muscular man in front of him who was as big as a hill. The burly man accepted the map and used a spell technique to scan the city wall in the distance. Master Dulu, I have one more thing to add. The students of the Celestial Court also arrived today, and there are a total of 100 of them, the thin man said. They're just a bunch of Dao body stage cultivators. There's only 1 or 2 spirit nurturing stage trash among them, so there's nothing to worry about. As for the soul formation stage teachers, I'll take care of them. Kill as many people as you can and drink as much blood as you can. Dulu chuckled coldly. Yes. The man bowed respectfully. He knew that this burly man before him was a powerful being who possessed the power of a city lord. Furthermore, he was a soul formation final stage, super powerful being who had been appointed by the higher-ups. Dulu's appearance would definitely transform Lincoln City into a paradise that could nourish their flesh and blood. Not only are there soldiers, but there are also fresh students as well. What a pleasant surprise. I heard that all of the students of the Celestial Court are prodigies with exceptional aptitude. I finally have a chance to taste them. A sinister smile appeared on Dulu's face as he stuck out his long, crimson tongue. The thin man was also extremely excited with a fawning smile on his face. He could already envision the exciting and beautiful future that awaited him. Boom! Suddenly, a boundless mighty force descended from the sky. The invisible power crashed down upon Dulu's burly body, flattening him into the ground. The sound of flesh and bone cracking rang out. Dulu's burly body was reduced to a thin sheet of paper as his flesh and blood splattered all over the ground. Everyone instantly fell silent. Master Dulu, The thin man stared at the burly man before him with a blank expression. Everything was completely silent. The burly man had already lost all signs of life. The thin man was completely dumbstruck. He had brought Du Lu here to survey the terrain, but he had been slapped to death without uttering a single word. Du Lu was his soul formation, final stage blood tribe, powerful being. He didn't even have a chance to cry out before he was slapped to death. Just what kind of power was this? The thin man looked up at the majestic city in the distance, and in that instant, a sense of horror washed over him like a tidal wave. He let loose a shrill cry before fleeing into the distance in a frenzy, leaving a trail of blood in his wake. On the city wall of Ling Kin City, the flying sword god, Su Xiaolan, Xin Yuan Cheng, and Su Qianyan all turned toward Du Lu. Dabai also seemed to have sensed something, and he turned toward a certain black mountain in the distance to detect energy fluctuations there. What happened over there, big brotherin? Woof, Dabai asked with a curious expression. And Lin was still lying on Dabai's back with his eyes narrowed as he looked up at the clouds in the blue sky. Nothing much, I just slapped a mosquito to death. Chapter 1088. Something very strange had happened in Ling Kin City. The Blood Tribe army stationed near Ling Kin City had silently retreated by 5 kilometers. They couldn't even see their shadows in the first place. Now, they couldn't even see them with binoculars. Why were they suddenly so terrified? The soldiers guarding the city were all dumbfounded. In the beginning, some of the strategists thought that this was a strategic retreat by the Blood Tribe. However, the Blood Tribe, who usually sent scouts to harass them every 3 days, had now holed up in a certain base for several days in a row. The students were originally here for the end-of-term examination, but now they were all like salted fish. They couldn't even fight a single scout, and all of them were living with 0 merits. Finally, General Wang Junming couldn't sit still any longer. He said to the soldiers, "There must be a reason behind this. The Blood Tribe has been behaving too strangely these past few days. They must be plotting something big. We can't just sit here and wait for death. We should take the initiative to attack and ruin their plans." Just like that, 2,000 soldiers and 100 students began to aggressively charge toward the Blood Tribe army 50 kilometers away. "General Tyren, the Ling Kin City army is charging toward us," a Blood Tribe scout anxiously reported. "What?" A thin Blood Tribe male with gray hair abruptly stood up. Tyren was the Blood Tribe powerful being who had witnessed Duru being mysteriously slapped to death with a single palm strike. "I've already given in so much. So why are they still chasing after us?" Tyren gritted his teeth as his eyes flashed incessantly. "No, if that powerful being is really here, why would they need to expend so much effort to attack us? That powerful being must have just happened to pass by Ling Kin City and killed Duru in passing. There's no way he would be so bored as to mix with this army." Tyren quickly analyzed an exciting fact. He raised his arms and yelled, "Kids, after so many days of holding back, it's time to eat." The Blood Tribe soldiers all cheered in unison. They'd been holding back for so many days and were about to throw up from drinking blood packets. Now, they could finally eat fresh blood essence. Just like that, over 1,000 Blood Tribe soldiers charged toward the human soldiers under General Tyren's leadership. The two armies finally clashed head-on. However, it was also at this moment. Boom, boom, boom. Golden explosions engulfed the entire area. Even the earth tremored from the explosions. 3 seconds later, Tyren lay in a pool of blood, his entire body charred black. His lips trembled as he muttered, "How is this possible?" The 2,000 human soldiers also murmured to themselves, "How could this be?" More than 1,000 Blood Tribe soldiers have been blasted beyond recognition. They lay on the ground, their vitality severed, and their faces were filled with confusion and pain. The students silently turned their gazes to one of the men, their class monitor. Xin Yuan Cheng raised his hands and said guiltily, "I'm sorry. I can't control my strength well when I'm agitated, and I accidentally killed them all. It's my fault that you guys didn't have the chance to train." The flying sword god was furious. "You were wrong this time. Let me add one more point. when dealing with such trash in the future. He pointed at Su Xiaolan and Lin and Su Qianyun and said, "Can the three of you not make a move? Please give the other students a chance." The students nodded in agreement. Teardrops rolled down Tyron's cheeks when he heard this. There were 3 more freaks who could kill the entire Blood Tribe army in one move. What kind of bad luck was this? Why were these big shots playing house with a bunch of soldiers? Were they that bored? Just as Tyron was on the verge of breaking down, a dog's head appeared in his field of vision. The dog's round eyes were wide open, and a sinister smile suddenly appeared on its face. There's still one alive? I'm going to finish you off, woof. A silvery white blade of wind tore through the air, and the severely injured Tyron was completely unable to dodge it. That peerlessly powerful blade of wind became the last glimmer of light he saw in his life. In the final moments of his life, Tyron came to the tragic realization that he couldn't even defeat this dog in his best condition. Splat. Blood splattered everywhere, and a head was separated from his body. The Blood Tribe army that had been eyeing Lincoln City was completely annihilated. The soldiers guarding the city began to retreat, and all of them wore blank expressions on their faces. So, what on earth had they come out to do this time? At this moment, General Wang Junming stepped forward and said excitedly, "Everyone, just treat this as a long-distance training trip. We've gained quite a lot. Soldier morale, +1, +1, +1, +1. In any case, Lincoln City had achieved a complete victory in this battle. Wang Junming and the Flying Sword God stood atop the city wall and gazed at the boundless dark marshlands in the distance. The sun was setting in the west, and the dark yellow hue of the setting sun added a sense of tragedy and desolation to this pitch-black land. After witnessing the strength of Xianyuan Cheng and the others, Wang Junming finally couldn't help but ask, "Fellow Taoist Ling Xiao, your students are so powerful. Why didn't they just wipe out all the surrounding Blood Tribe forces? Because there are enemies more powerful than us." The Flying Sword God still didn't want to stand out too much. Enemies more powerful than you? Wang Junming came to a sudden realization. Are you afraid of the counterattack of the return to Void Stage Blood Tribe Lords? No, I'm afraid of Emperor Yi Deng's counterattack, the Flying Sword God said solemnly. Wang Junming, Emperor Yi Deng was a legendary powerful being of the Blood Tribe. If he really did make a move, he would probably target an entire tribe or a region. Why would he come to a mere city to wreak havoc? Isn't fellow Taoist Ling Xiao overthinking things? Wang Junming was thinking this, but he wasn't going to say it out loud. Right at this moment, Xianyuan Cheng made his way over to the Flying Sword God with a conflicted expression. Teacher, there's something I want to tell you." "Student Xianyuan, just tell me what you want to say. There's no need to be so reserved." A warm smile appeared on the Flying Sword God's face. Student Lin has left this city. He said he's going to find a few returned to Void Stage Blood Tribe cultivators and tell us not to worry about him," Xianyuan Cheng said with difficulty. The smile on the Flying Sword God's face gradually disappeared. "Didn't you say you wouldn't cause any trouble?" He said he's going to hide his identity, and he left Tina with us as a backup. "He told us not to worry," Xianyuan Cheng said with resignation. The Flying Sword God massaged his brows. "What's he trying to do?" He said he needs to enrage a return to Void Stage mighty figure to practice a cultivation method, or something. Xianyuan Cheng hesitated momentarily before spitting out this ridiculous excuse. The Flying Sword God. Enrage a return to Void Stage mighty figure to obtain a cultivation method? What kind of F***king excuse was that? However, what the homeroom teacher didn't expect was that all of this was true, and Lin was bored out of his mind, and he looked at his system again. He was then shocked to find that the progress of the heaven-blasting cannon of War Mission was showing signs of regressing again. There were less than 10 people left for the mission. Make 10 mighty figures above the return to Void Stage like him. Most of these mighty figures had taken a liking to Enlin because of his cooking. Ever since Enlin abandoned his cooking skills and didn't cook for them for 2 months, Su Xiaolan had slowly replaced Enlin's position and transferred this liking to him. That's right, his love had been snatched away by Su Xiaolan. the Heaven Blasting Cannon of War mission was facing a grave crisis. In order to obtain the Heaven Blasting Cannon of War spell technique as soon as possible, Unlin decided to enrage the 10 return to Void Stage Mighty Figures as quickly as possible. Currently, there were only 6 people left for the mission. Make 10 Mighty Figures above the return to Void Stage Hate Me. In other words, he still had to fight 4 return to Void Stage Mighty Figures.